Welcome everybody to the Barons Club podcast. We are live with MightyTeapot and Mukluk. We're going to switch the scene just a second here. This is actually our second episode where all three of us are here in the same state of the game discussion. We've done one, what was it, last year, and it's very different. We're in a very different phase of the game than we were last year, I think, right? So welcome, Teapot, Mukluk. Good to have you guys.
Thanks for having me on. And yes, we are indeed in a different place. We're in the end game now, MM.
Yeah, we are in the end game. By the way, just to let you guys know, Mukluk here is a very busy man, you know, because he's a famous internet celebrity. So we are on borrowed time right now. So we're going to try and get a lot of discussion underway.
I don't know if it's because I'm an internet celebrity. I think it's just because I'm a dad.
Yeah, could be as well. Yeah, I mean, I'll learn that. Maybe even Teapot will learn that soon. TM the next couple of years. Imagine a mini Teapot running around.
Oh, I do. I mean, are you sure you want to imagine that?
You'd have to name him. What was it? What was the little cup in Beauty and the Beast? You have to name him after that.
So, easy name for an online alias, I guess. So very easy time though.
An oil baron, Teapot, and a potato in the same room. What a time to be alive. Wow, that's a good joke, I guess. Easy meme content right there. Anyway, so our discussion for today, guys, will be pretty much on wrapping up the Icebrood saga, how everything was handled. I'm sure there'll be some interesting discussion there. We're going to then switch over after that to the balance patch, and then from the balance patch, talk about the brief overview of the upcoming things that they're putting into the game, kind of to promote their announcement in July 27th. So we're going to talk about the brief overview of the roadmap that gets us to the announcement of End of Dragons, and then over that we swap over to the End of Dragons discussion. So it's going to be interesting. And yeah, let's begin. So the first the first obvious question I have for you guys is, how did you feel when you first watched the trailer for the end of the Icebrood saga versus when you actually played the final chapter, right? Because it's very two different feelings when you actually play it versus when we saw it initially. So I'll let you guys begin, Teapot or Mukluk.
I had fairly low expectations, and I got more than I expected.
Band-Aid off moment.
And I got more and less than I expected, to be honest. Right? The thing that was really absent for me was that there was no cleanup at the end. Right? In terms of the actual story content, that was kind of about what I was expecting. Maybe even actually a little bit more, because we got this open world boss, and I was like, oh, okay. I was kind of expecting it to all be resolved in a story instance, right? With not a lot of replayability attached to it. So we got more than I was expecting there. But the thing where, in my opinion, it really was a bit weird. It was like, where's my EOD teaser? Where is the epilogue? It's over, right? Like the thing. Okay, but spoilers, by the way, guys, in case anyone was wondering about that. But yeah, it just disappeared completely. All of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, story's gone. That's it. See you guys in a few months, by the way. Boom. There you go. So that's kind of my general thought on the episode. It was all right. Okay, the lore people are going to be very, very angry with good reason. And it ended very, very abruptly in a 12-second cutscene, and then there was no kind of resolution to the main plot there afterwards.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I've been actively making content for Guild Wars 2 and playing it the last 2.5 years. So just me, playing vanilla, hot, Path of Fire, all the available living worlds. I went through all of that in relatively recently, and I remember when they announced the Icebrood saga, they brought everyone to that venue, and people were like, oh, they haven't done this since Heart of Thorns. And I was like, oh, really? Sweet. This is going to be, amazing. And then there was that cinematic where it showed the code in on the screen, and everyone's like, new race. And then they were like, nope, new living world number 5. And then I remember that guy on Cape in the Jedi Sith robe. I don't even remember who that was, but it was I remember everyone leaving that venue looked really disappointed. And then it's like, okay, well, I don't know why they built up the hype so much. This is Living World. And then after having just played season 3 and 4, it felt I was kind of let down. Like Rothmar and Biora and Drizzlewood certainly were not bad, They were nice zones. I enjoyed the zones, but it certainly didn't live up to, they said that, this is a saga. This isn't a Nether Living World. This is going to be expansion level content delivered in episodes. And it was not that. It was not that.
Yeah.
I love most of what we got, but it wasn't that. And then changing topic to the story. I was very passionate about the story until now. I would not say I'm a lore nerd. I don't know what's going on half the time, but I'm very passionate. It was like, oh, I love this character. I hate Bram. I love this other character. I still hate Bram. Stuff like that. Like I had passions when it came to some of the characters. And then we went into this newest thing, and it was just like they just threw everything out the window. And I barely remember Guild Wars 1, but, I remember Primordius's, one of his minions was one of the big bad guys. Like, it was causing earthquakes and almost destroyed the planet. And then 10 years later, he peeks out of the ground, gets booped on the nose twice, screams, and then that's it. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That was after 10 years.
It's,
okay.
Well, the thing is, from Guild Wars 1 player, like for me, for example, it was really like a huge build up towards kind of, this dragon that we've been kind of like for a while knowing that this guy is going to be a very long drawn out dragon. We're not going to face him off early off in Guild Wars 2. It was always like another dragon. We're like, but this is the original that we knew about from the Guild Wars 1 Eye of the North expansion, right? So for me, like watching the trailer, it was exciting. I mean, it really was a good trailer. Like, it kind of hyped you up for something that was huge and, something that could be very exciting to come to the game. And then, reality was, you finish the mission and you're like, wait, that's the entire thing? It's basically one thing. And then it was I guess you could say like the whole cutscene at the end was amazing. But then when you think of it, like that entire cutscene and then that entire build up towards just 12 seconds was just, it just falls flat. And even the world boss itself, I mean, there's been people apparently soloing it, right? So it's just
it does scale. It
does scale. But even when it does scale, I think it's for a world boss, I guess it's okay. It kind of does have some things that you have to coordinate a little bit, right? Like you have to go kill the other nodes in a phase, and then you have to come back and then fight and break the bar for something. Like, there's a bit of interaction that people are required to focus. So
if there's one thing to like attack the patron, it's probably not the boss. I think the boss is actually quite well done. Like, it's not the craziest boss in the universe. But yeah, like you can solo. I mean, look, anything is possible if you have Trailblazer gear. Like, anything will fall if you have some kind of solo.
I use that in open world. It's relaxing.
It will lose, right? Like you won't die. Now, I do. You know what? We got Mr. Doom and Gloom over here for both of these two. Let's actually put some context here, right? Because in my opinion, the context is very, very interesting here, and it actually mirrors. Because I am making a video about this, and I did some research for this. This, in my opinion, mirrors the Heart of Thorns release a lot. As in, rather like, we're leading up to another Heart of Thorns expansion, or rather, we're leading up to another expansion, and the lead up to that is similar to Heart of Thorns. So, Season 2 and Season 3, and honestly, Season 4 of Living Story, right, have had similar issues to this, right? There have been some maps that are completely unfinished. It's actually a bit of a meme in the community. Like, if I say Team 3 right now, like, the chat is going to know what I meant. I mean by that. Basically, it's this idea that they have teams working on episodes separately, right? So they like rotate teams around. So it takes longer than the normal cadence to develop it. So they have teams like rotating. So you'll have Team 3 does the third map and the sixth map for the season. And it was very, very infamous that Team 3, for whatever reason, okay, like maybe there were less people, or maybe it was just harder to do these maps. The maps would be scuffed, right, from Team 3. And that's exactly what they were. I mean, if you look at Bitterfrost Frontier, not a very finished map. You could honestly say the same thing for Corner. You could say the same thing for Siren's Landing as well. There's a lot of things that the previous seasons struggled. But if you look at the HOT release, like Season 2, it just happens like, oh yeah, it's Scarlet. Oof, we're finally free of that character. Wasn't that bad, but people didn't like it very much. And then you have this like really big drought before the expansion. Right, it was the final episode of Season 2 was in January, and the expansion released in October. Yeah, have fun with that. And hey, that's certainly not going to happen this time. And like that announcement, that you pointed out, yeah, that was really, really hype, and it was insanely overhyped. But why was it? Like let's actually think about like why that was. Well, up until just a few months before that, well, no, that's not true. But around 6 months before that, they were like, everything's good, everything's fine and dandy. We're making our June video game. We're making some other projects. Don't mind us. We've just got Guild Wars 2 on the back burner. We're just going crazy, having some fun, making some other projects. And then the Koreans...
And then the layoffs, right?
Yeah. Then they like say, oh, yeah, by the way, you aren't doing that anymore. Right? And bear in mind, we know for a fact that Arena, and by the way, all games companies will do this. They're not like developing on like a week by week basis. They know what they're doing in like a year from now. And like even now, they know what they're doing in a year from now. And they knew they were doing that Icebrood Saga announcement then. They probably already had a good amount of it arranged and planned, right, that they were going to do that. And I doubt they really had time to change that because all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, you're doing an expansion, by the way, right? So go ahead and you might want to go make that.
I mean,
and at the same time, it's like, what are we going to do for a year? Right. And that's why they still announced the Icebrood Saga, knowing that, they probably wouldn't be able to deliver on it. And I think it's really interesting that you pointed out Bjora, Grothmar, and Drizzlewood, right, Muk? Because you're absolutely right. Some of the elements, particularly at the start of the saga, were actually very well polished and like very well executed, right? If you look at the maps, right, you could say the first 3 maps in a way, right? Because they split the maps up into little pieces to release them over time, right? They were actually already done. Like, I think it's very, very strong, very strongly implied by this that like this was kind of already done like for a long time. And it was then as a result of it, because they didn't want to develop any more content and go on to the expansion instead, they just split that stuff up, covered it over the entire saga. So even though it was well executed, right? Like, like I think Drizzlewood's a really cinematic map. I think it falls a little flat in terms of gameplay, but that's another thing entirely. But what I'm trying to get at here is that the saga was a little bit unfinished and they couldn't quite get the job done, particularly the latter half of it, right? We're talking Champions in particular, I would say was certainly probably like, right, what can we do? Let's just try and make some stuff and see what happens.
I agree with you that like the saga itself, like I think there was initially, I even remember after the announcement, people were still like not really hyped up really because they were like, that was it, that was the announcement of another season. But yeah, I think we all agree here that the first story episodes of the saga were actually very enjoyable. I think it was a huge, in my opinion, the early episodes of the saga hold up there. Like they probably even compete with Living World Season 4 story mode content, right? So it was definitely like planned and you could see that there was a huge progression that they were planning to build towards. And, you know, when the announcement of the expansion, if that's where it ended up happening, right? Where they felt like they had to build towards Jormag, right? And we knew that like there was like the last episode of the saga before we ended up in Champions, the updates of those, like you could see there was a huge amount of planning for episodes after. But then of course with the End of Dragon's announcement, they had to cut that short, like you said. So it kind of makes it feel like it's 2 different, like I guess you could say, seasons within the same season, because the first half is just very well executed and then the second half is just very rushed because they just couldn't put the time and effort to develop any more of these maps. And it kind of leaves you hoping for what could have been. I've seen a few things
on this topic from Wooden Potatoes Twitter. He was speculating, and I think it's important to emphasize for the people in chat, this was speculation, that they maybe had like 4 episodes planned building up Jormag, and then maybe 4 more building up Primordius, and then there would be like a clash at the end. But then they were like getting to the end of the Jormag section, and then they were just told, hey, tie it off with a bow. We're working on this other thing now. And so then they just were like, and then, they had to just kind of like smash all their ideas together in like 1 episode at the end and just had to rush through it. Don't know if that's true, but that would certainly explain some things if possible.
That sounds perfectly plausible to me. I would even say it could have been more. Like ArenaNet planned to do this forever, right? Like in a way, like they planned to not do any more expansions, at least for the short term. They were going to just do living story releases and try different types of content while they, work on their other IP. Which, by the way, guys, makes sense. You can't have all your, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket when you're doing anything, right? You always want to diversify. And ArenaNet's had this kind of one product for a long time, which is a little bit scary, particularly seeing as it is an aging product as well, right? It's getting old here, guys. Like Guild Wars 2 are kind of up to 9 years at this point, right? It's been around for a while, so you do want to actually look at other other solutions, other ideas there as well. So that's what they were trying to do. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, like halfway through, they got through this stuff, and they was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, guys, we're gonna need you to kill both those elder dragons, and we're gonna go and do the expansion. Can you guys do that in half a season? Like, yeah, can we get that done?" And like the writing department was like, no, why would you even say that? But like, what's the alternative? Like, the alternative is like you throw that into the expansion as well. Then you have like this weird clash of these two storylines, and the expansion gets kind of scuffed. And I don't know, you could say continue it over there and make the expansion Cantha themed. I mean, yeah, like Cantha and Jormag themed. Yeah, I guess you could do that. But do you really want to be focusing on dragons forever? Because, by the way, I do actually want to just, a little bit of a call here, a little bit of a hot take for the community here. Like, has the dragon storyline ever really been like mega popular? Like, in my opinion, I would say no. You guys like Flashpoint in season 3, where Timey shoots a laser right at Primordus and Jormag and sends them both to sleep in one episode? Yeah, guys, we've already done this, right? This episode that just happened, we already did it like a few years ago, right? So we did it even way more lame than that, because we just like said, oh, go to sleep, like, oh, see you guys later, right? Yeah, you guys like Aurene coming back to life within 15 minutes of in-game time when you actually play through the story in a linear fashion? You guys like that stuff? That's good writing, yeah? Like, you're enjoying that? Like, I think the dragon storyline is something that is very hard to actually effectively execute across the board. And I think ArenaNet, to a certain extent, want rid of it. I don't think they want to be with that. I think they want to tell the more interesting stories. And you know what? I'm going to debate the chat now. Let's talk about that. Like, what's good about that? Well, what about the Bone Skinner, right? Something like the Bone Skinner, where you have to, assist this Coden from not, craving the taste of its own bear meat to degenerate into the Bone Skinner. What about stuff like Joko, an incredibly well-loved character, or the White Mantle in season 3, or the Raid storylines, or the Fractal storyline? In my opinion, there is great writing and storytelling in Guild Wars 2. It's just not the main storyline. The main storyline is big and cumbersome, and because it's got this chosen one dynamic slapped on there as well, you end up feeling very, very contrived, right? Like, what did we do in Dragonstorm? Did we fight Primordus and Jormag? No, we fought their minions, then we flew up into the air and fired a laser beam out of them with our special action hotkey, and then Aurene just said, oh yeah, by the way, that's not good enough. I will now detonate my Omega bomb and blow them both up, but actually not blow them up, then they eat each other.
Have you ever watched Care Bear as a kid? You know Care Bears? And for those that don't know, Care Bears is like
I know of them.
Yeah, it's a cartoon of like literally bears who have like basically their whatever they feel like is it portrayed on their stomach. So like a happy bear will have like a picture of like a rainbow or something. Like someone that feeling love will have a heart. Like they literally like their emotions can be seen on their chest. And whenever they try to solve a problem, like they get determined and they want to have like I
can't wait to find out where you're going with
basically this. They get together and they go like, get ready for the Care Bear stare, and then they just shoot like happiness out of their chest to solve their problem. And that's basically what we did in the end of that map. We shot our happiness to Aurene, and she killed the dragons.
Yeah, that's
that's
just,
about I don't know. I don't know. It's in general, like, yeah, I do agree that the dragon.
I think you played a different episode than me, but okay.
Yeah, I feel like the dragon storyline. Yeah, it can be at this point. It's pretty tired, right? It definitely needs a change, and yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of things. If you go back to Guild Wars 1, that game had nothing to do with dragons, right? Dragons were just an element in the game, but they weren't even a focus. So there is a lot on the table that they can do in the storyline. I know a lot of people are like, what can they do? What direction? Honestly, ANET has a lot of direction with the storylines in Guild Wars 2. There's just so much they could focus on, right? So
well, that's what I mean. They can be free now. They can be free, finally free of the dragon. They can tell the interesting stuff.
In a sense, people were expecting these mega world boss level types of dragon fights. That is just when you scale the dragons to the point of like, this is how huge they are. Realistically, that's hard to implement in the game, right? It's just it's too much amount of like work to make a dragon model that huge and not mess up the game in somehow or break something else, something in a dungeon that you have no idea is broken because of this one content.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why like with, Mordremoth, it was just like, all right, he is the jungle, and we like fought him in his mind and stuff like that. Zhaitan, of course, we all know how the Zhaitan fight ended in the game. I don't know what was originally planned on it. I've seen the unused model where you maybe fight him on the ground afterward, but of course, unfortunately, currently in the game, it ends with you just blasting him out of the sky with the gunship. And you had to use a gunship because he was far too big for you to run at him with a sword or something. And yes, there's different ways they could do it, but I myself am not hung up on the dragons. I think the world needs an antagonist, even if it's just the two sides, like Char fighting Norn or Char fighting humans or whatever the factions are. But there has to be some point of conflict, and for me, that's all the dragons were. I think I was just more disappointed in how much they built up a villain and then just dropped it.
Yeah.
Like it didn't, whether it was dragons or Balthazar or Joko, it could have been any villain there. It was just the fact that they like building and building and building, and then we don't want to play with you anymore.
I would argue
Scarlet. I think that was the bummer.
I would argue Scarlet as I know a lot of people hated Scarlet in season 1, but I would argue she's probably the most well-developed villain this game's ever had, actually. Right? There was an entire season built around confronting her. And of course, season 1 was actually a little longer than the seasons we get now, but in a sense of character development, she probably has the most developed storyline as a villain in the game. And you compare that with other minor villains, like, I mean, even Balthazar, I think, had, because he's a human, he will have, or he's a god, but like he has a personality in a way, right? Like he pretty much, you could sense like whatever his motivations are and like if it could change or not. Whereas with the dragons, in theory, the concept is nice, but there's not so much. Like, for example, Zaitan, didn't have a personality. Mordremoth, we got to see that early glimpse of what a dragon motivation could be. But then you have, Jormag and Primordus will also have something in a sense like that. But then Primordus is again another Zaitan, just no personality. It's just, I'm Primordus and I'm here to destroy things, fire. And it just gets like booped. And so yeah, it's very hard because like their personality is just one-sided. Either that or they don't have one. And if it's one-sided, it's basically they just want to destroy the world or they have to consume the world, right? And there's only so much you can pull that storyline before it's just like it's the same thing in a different format kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to actually engage with something that massive. I think that Mordremoth was probably the best way they actually pulled this off so far. And Kralkatorrik was okay, actually. Like, it was very similar, actually. I mean, the Kralkatorrik and Mordremoth fights were very, very similar. Like, you basically, yes, we will enter the dragon. Okay, we'll go inside and we will fight the dragon in one way or another. And that's exactly what we did. And that was satisfying enough, I think. It's a shame the Mordremoth fight was very buggy on release. But you know what? They kind of fixed that a little bit by now. It's very difficult to actually make something like that that's actually satisfying, which is why I think, I think you can feel a lot more connected to the game when you're fighting something like Balthazar, because you were actually there, like you were actually fighting him, right? Same thing with Joker, right? I actually think the Joker fight was really, really cool. Like, you have like these bizarre mechanics where you can't see the AoEs unless you use the action key. Probably not the best design there, but it was kind of fun, right? It was an interesting fight, and you actually engage with the character. And obviously, yeah, like when you're dealing with an actual, I guess, like a humanoid, right, or something that is a bit more relatable than like a giant earthquake, right, which is basically what a lot of the dragons are. You can kind of have a little bit more fun with it, right? Like in particular Joker, right? Like Joko like had some serious personality about him, right? He's kind of like, he was roasting you, he's making fun of us, right? It's good content, right? That's entertaining stuff there. And they did actually address this, right? Like for a long time the old dragons were a bit like, whatever, right? Who even is this thing, right? But yeah, like with Jormag, they definitely tried to push this. And this is another thing I think that really builds up this theory of the idea that, they basically were doing the Jormag, which is, by the way, what's Icebrood saga, not the Ice-Firebrood saga. Because, yeah, like they were developing Jormag, then they were going to develop Primordus, then they were going to just smash them into each other, like over the course of multiple years. But all of that got completely cut, because of the expansion. And I guess the way I would look at this to kind of like round out my full opinion on this, because I forgot to say this, and it's very, very important. Like, yes, team, right, this was not good, right? The storytelling here, a little bit scuffed, right? Not ideal right there. There are definitely a lot of issues there, but I don't think it has any implications for the future of the game, in the same way that the content drought before Heart of Thorns, and, well, also some of the issues afterwards, didn't really have any bearing on the expansion itself, right? The expansion itself released basically the biggest feature dump the game had ever had, and you had some of the community's most favorite maps of all time, right? So like Chatgaren, Octovine, Dragonsen, right? And then you also have Path of Fire, right? Like Path of Fire, like the game before Path of Fire was in a very weird, was in a bit of an interesting state there, right? They were kind of like, oh, we got to churn out another expansion, let's go. Like everything was pretty rushed. Like some of the Living Story Season 3 content was certainly the production value was not on the level that we saw in season 4, right? Like, season 4 was very, very well produced in my opinion. A few things
I
aside.
honestly feel like season 3, in terms of potential storytelling, was a little, to me, it was a little more interesting than season 4. And it's just because there were so many plot points they're bringing in season 3. They brought White Mantle, they brought the Mersat, they had a bit of, a couple things going on there, not just a focus on Dragon. And I think that made season 3 a little more interesting. And you also had like a little bit of politics going on with the humans, right? So it felt like season 3 had potential to be a good storytelling season. Just like you said, it was just too rushed to get into Path of Fire. So they had to end up wrapping it up a little bit.
I think season 4 was definitely my favorite. Season 3, I remember having to wiki a lot. Like the Mersat, again, I mentioned I played Guild Wars 1, but it was a really long time ago. So like when I had the Mersat, I was like, I have to remember these guys. And I would go to the wiki and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And then there was like the I forget her name, but there was the lady that was hunting the Mersat, and she had been like immortal and was running around for, hundreds and hundreds of years. And I remember looking her up. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So I feel like season 3 definitely hits harder if you played Guild Wars 1 and remembered a lot of it. Like there's a lot of nostalgia bombs there. Season 4 though, I remember multiple times in season 4, I actually got like chills. Some of the scenes with Joko and like when Kraukatoric led to the creation of Dragon's Fall and he became the new map. I was just like, oh, like that was so cool. I loved that so much. That was fantastic. That was definitely my favorite season.
Yeah, season 4. And you know what? I think that's a really good point actually about season 3. I think season 3 probably did actually kind of bamboozle people a little bit. There were a lot of callbacks. Like the existence of Bloodstone Fen, like the White Mantle. There was a lot of callbacks there to the original game that might have bamboozled people who maybe weren't who just straight didn't play the first game, for example. And yeah, and season 4 as well. Yeah, the production value was like, ooh, yeah, definitely on point, right? Like it's Guild Wars 2 at its most cinematic as season 4 for sure.
I would definitely say that season 4 was even Path of Fire mostly built towards season 4, right? So I think that's also why that season gets a lot of praises, because it wasn't like the season was building towards expansion. It was kind of like the expansion actually was building towards the season. So you had a lot of high production episodes that just made that season very memorable. Of course, with a lot of chills and a lot of heartbreaks here and there. Of course, some heartbreaks were solved in like 15 minutes of gameplay later. But yeah, I mean, in general, the seasons are, it depends on what hit people mostly, because yeah, season 3 kind of was like they rushed a lot of storylines together, and if you're a Guild Wars 1 fan who remembers a lot of them, it hits very close to you compared to others who, I mean, I think even me as a Guild Wars 1 fan, I probably have to Google something. I was just like, I know this, but let me just Google a little bit of it. So I wikied some things, but in a sense, I think, yeah, overall, to wrap up this discussion before we head into the roadmap discussion, it's interesting to see what they can be with Kantha, because here's the thing. Kantha in its own has plot lines that aren't even related to Tyria. So and we'll get this into End of Dragons later in the podcast, but that itself has a lot it has a lot of choices for us to explore.
Which is why they had to clean up this storyline as well.
Yeah.
Right. Like the reason they needed to do this is because they wanted to actually explore those storylines, and it's going to be way harder to do that if you bring the baggage of 2 Elder Dragons at the same time.
Although the baggage.
Yeah,
you're not wrong. I just think it's a funny term.
Yeah, I mean, seriously though, like I think the End of Dragons is going to be okay. End of Dragons as an entity is probably going to be better that they made this call to basically say, right, we're going to cut our losses, and just move on and go somewhere else. It's going to be new. It's going to be different. And I think it's going to be a very, very polished experience. Like, even though the Icebrood saga, certainly in terms of production, is not quite up to ArenaNet standards, right? Like some of the content is very, very short. Some of the content isn't quite as polished or developed as we want. I don't think that actually has any ramifications for the future of the game and the future of the expansion. I think it's going to be like a really, really well-polished product, because I think ArenaNet know it's important. Right, ArenaNet are going to be very cognizant of the fact that if this goes badly, then it's not that the game will die, right? I don't want to be over dramatic. It's that the game will not grow, right? Unless that happens, right? Like the game will just stay where it is. Like this is whenever you have something like an expansion announcement, an Icebrood saga announcement, these are the points in a games company's history where you have these opportunities to change your trajectory, right? And this is definitely one of them. This honestly might be one of the most important moments in Guild Wars 2's history, because it can either go up and up and up, or it can just kind of like flatline and just, you know, descend back into the depths of Omega Lore. Because, hey, those other MMOs, they ain't doing so hot right now. I mean, there's a lot of anger in the WoW community right now. Final Fantasy, they've gone back to watching anime, right, and erotic role-playing, right, because they're waiting for content to come out as well, right?
Oh, please, WoW does role-play as well. You even a Goldshire?
Oh, no. Oh, dear.
Have you not seen our game?
Yeah, how do you know? Okay, you like those Draenei, Mook? You like that stuff, dude?
I am an innocent flower. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. Well,
yeah. It was a great point that you made about that, MM. Actually, like, and I think this is a mistake Arena Network make. And just I hate to continue talking it because I know we want to move on, but I want to really highlight how much of a good point that was, saying that season 4 was like directly continuous from Path of Fire. This is a mistake that Arena Network make again. It is a very bad idea to make your expansion so it like ends, right? So it's like, oh yeah, we killed the big bad guy, by the way, guys. Like, Mordermoth's dead. That was definitely not a good idea in Heart of Thorns. Much better in Path of Fire when it was much more continuous and linked together.
Yeah, because
I think you're saying just at the end of it, have a hook for the next thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you gotta hook people, and you gotta keep people. Always people can go, oh, I beat the game. I can go and install now.
Yeah, that's kind of what Heart of Thorns felt like. I think in terms of expansion, it's better than Path of Fire, but in terms of hook to the next thing coming in Guild Wars 2, when you have that, it just ends at the end boss, it's killed, and then you're basically, okay, well, I'll wait till they announce something, rather than Path of Fire, where you kill the big bad, but then it's actually building towards something else, another season. So this felt like a prequel to the season, right? So now, yeah, we'll discuss more of this when we get back to the End of Dragons discussion, because a lot, storylines in a sense we can relate this back. But to move on to the next topic, which is the balance patch, and in an overview of the roadmap that they released when the Icebrood saga ending was announced, right? So how do you guys feel about, first of all, we'll get into the balance patch, but in a sense, what do you think overview of the fact that they released the roadmap rather than just saying tune in July 27th, this is going to be the stream where we discuss End of Dragons features.
Love it.
Exactly, right? Like, the fact that they've given us
communication is good.
The roadmap, the thing is with the communication is that it gives you that, here's a roadmap, this is what we're going to promote in the game, in these game modes, and then tune in to the stream July 27th. I personally think that is, I don't know whoever was in charge of that, but that is how you market a build up to an expansion. So I'll let you guys discuss.
I got a couple things to say about that. Like, one, I think they probably knew that the vocal people were not going to be happy with the newest release that they just did. And I think whoever's decision it was to release the roadmap and also the product that they figured people might not be happy with on the same day, I think that was very smart of them, because that made it to where even those of us that, really didn't like what we got that day, we had all these other wonderful things to look forward to, we hope. I praise them for releasing those same day. I think that probably quelled some potential fires within the community. With the exception of Reddit, that's always on fire. And then aside from that, the tune in for more details of this stuff later. It keeps you wondering, like, okay, they've already released all this. What's going to happen on that day with the additional announcements? Maybe they'll talk about the more of the elite specs. Maybe they'll trickle out some more information like they did with it. Again, I wasn't an active player when Hot came out, but I've gone back and I've watched some of the the release trailers and stuff they did. Like, oh, maybe we're going to get stuff like this. Where they teased the Scrapper and the Chrono and they showed them for a little bit, stuff like that. It gives you something to look forward to. I've said for a long time on my own channel that there's really two things that I feel like Guild Wars 2 does poorly, and that was communication and advertising. So seeing this was very, very good for me. I couldn't praise it enough.
Yeah, the biggest thing one of the biggest things that's plagued Guild Wars 2 for an extremely long time is uncertainty. I don't need communication from Blizzard to know they're making a new WoW expansion, but I do because they're going to do that, and I know they're going to do that. I do need communication from ArenaNet because, in general, they've been quite an unpredictable company, right? It's like, oh, we're not doing expansions, by the way. This is the original plan in Guild Wars 2. We're going to do Living Strafe forever, hooray, right? Scarlet forever. But no, actually, no, we are doing expansions. And then it's like, oh, yeah, nothing happens for a long time. And then it's like, oh, yeah, now we're doing this, by the way. Right? Like Guild Wars 2, oh, yeah, are there raids coming? There's still been, like, no official confirmation that raids aren't being developed. Although that's semi not true. That finally happened, like, a while ago, right? Like, you don't need that in other games, but you do in Guild Wars 2 because there's so much uncertainty. And uncertainty, it breeds this animosity in the community, particularly in places like Reddit. And I think this is the first step in a very, very long road to actually regaining consumer trust. I think over the years, the trust and faith in Arena, or rather confidence in Arena, has dissolved into a complete goop within the community. And yeah, they've got a long way to go, right? They need to get
Dude, I was scared that they had given up on the Legendary Armory because they hadn't mentioned it in over a year. And I was remembering all the horror stories I've heard about alliances and stuff. And I'm like, oh God, if they don't talk about it for a long time, that means they're done. And then so just seeing Legendary Armory was on the list, I was like, yes, it's back. Even though it never possibly went anywhere, I was still so happy just to see it mentioned again.
The thing is, I was more surprised that I was more surprised that it was being announced to release before the expansion, because we were at this point thinking, you know what, they might as well just release it for the expansion. It's another reason to buy the expansion. The fact that they're releasing it before, I was more shocked about that. So, I think, in a sense, generally, I would say when ANET tries to, when ANET knocks something out of the park, they do it very well. I wouldn't say that there's obviously some times where they do a lot of questionable decisions, but the moments where they do it, really show you what they can be, those moments are always 100% exciting, because you could see that this company has the ability to do what they can do. It's just sometimes a lot of it it falls flat because they don't maybe put that effort to, and something Snebzor told me about the roadmap or even just the expansion. They've been developing this expansion since last year. The fact that we don't get anything, no one's asking for a 10-minute video or a 20-minute gameplay video. Just give us a teaser, 10 seconds, or give us a few clips or a few screenshots of what you're working on, right? They don't give enough for their own community to kind of bite on and then more or less speculate, more or less create content for the content creators. So I don't know if they try to do it because they want to try and release something that's polished or as polished as can be. But I do think they suffer from that, because when you try to achieve, you guys both know this, if you achieve perfection, you're just never going to end up completing what you're trying to go for, right? You need to be content with something, at least to deliver something, right? Because if you don't, you might not end up delivering. And I think a lot of the times they're afraid of releasing something that's not 100% ready, and they just feel like they'll get eaten alive by it. And so I think that they should take more risks in that, right? Hey, we don't want a 20-minute gameplay, but if you gave us 10 seconds of something that's happening in the expansion, Wooden Potatoes will make 2-hour videos on that. Think of it that. So.
Yeah, ArenaNet they aren't very good at promoting their video game. They should definitely market it way more. I think part of this is because they live in 2005, and part of this is because Guild Wars 2 occupies a very unusual space in the MMO market, in my opinion. Guild Wars 2 is in the area where people are vaguely aware of it. They know of it because, ArenaNet's a fairly big studio for the, it's one of the few kind of big MMOs that are still out there. And what ArenaNet have done is they said, hey, all those other MMOs that have these kind of annoying things about them? We just removed all of those things from our game. We don't have that here. We don't have any of that annoying stuff that has been pissing you off and making you quit WoW or quit Final Fantasy. So come and play our video game. And they just assume that you'll eventually try it, right? And then you'll eventually buy it. And then if you quit, they don't care because you already paid for it and there's no sub fee. So Guild Wars 2 does have this it has a unique spot in the market that that does, I'm not justifying this, but it does actually to a certain extent like validate why they are this way. Because in a big sense, they have a genius marketing plan. Their marketing plan is how bad the other MMOs are essentially, and how much less annoying to play Guild Wars 2 is. So that's the way they go about that. But yeah, they should definitely get people
being better
and,
by contrast is the marketing plan.
Yeah. Seriously, no, I'm
Yeah.
serious. It actually is definitely, yeah. Like I can almost guarantee that that's a big part of like the way they market their game is by not. They are the anti MMO. Like Guild Wars 2 is the anti MMO. Guild Wars 2 is the MMO for non MMO players, right? Like you can play this game completely solo. There's no gear grind. There's no sub fee, right? Like you can beat everything by auto attacking, and it's also heavily story driven, right?
You
Like
could
this is
still
the
market
anti MMO.
that though. You could. That does not really say that that's not a reason to market though. You know what I mean? So.
I'm not saying it is. I mean, they definitely
should. It's a
should.
strong point. The fact that this game, for example, doesn't have a gear grind, I think it's a strong point for this game, right? It gives players the capacity of where like you're not basically behind on content, or if you log into the game, you don't have to grind another 20 hours to get the update. The most
I
updated
completely agree with you, but there are many people out there that if they don't have the cookie of the new sword in front of them, they don't know what to do with themselves. There's so many people that I feel like we have to like rewire their brains to enjoy Guild Wars 2.
Well, the thing is though, this is a really fascinating thing. Okay, I'm gonna this goes back to the saga in my opinion. Oh, this is what a great idea you just brought up there, Buck. Oh man, because here's the thing. What did they do with the Icebrood saga? Right, they made it really grindy. They made it like super grindy as well. And guess what? You've got this like really. Because you've got the half of the people who don't like the grind, right? Who just want to play basically a TV show, essentially, which is what Guild Wars 2 has become over the years. And then so they're like, oh, I'm so mad, I'm so angry. Like, oh, I've got to do 40 DRMs. Like, have you guys played other MMOs? 40, right? That's nothing. Like, try like 1,000, right? I know, like that's an actual grind. Okay, if you want to do 1,000. But yeah, like they've actually tried to do this a lot. Like Arena has actually tried to appease both sides. There's a lot of like entry level rewards you can grab from a lot of the stuff that you'll get just through playing through it. You'll get like a skin you can gather at maybe like a cape or something like that, and like grab a few weapons there as well, or like, grab a few cultural weapons from all these different allied races there. But you want to grind, like now there is actually like a really big grind. Like they actually gave in, they caved and made it way easier now to get the volcanic stormcaller weapons. But originally they were like insanely grindy, and like the otter infusion is like super grindy, and now these glowy eye infusions, it's super grindy, right? I think they're on the TP right now for around 5,000 gold, maybe even more than that. Actually, I don't know the exact price, but in a way, Arena is tried to fix this. They're making the game way more grindy, I think to actually in a way appeal to a broader audience. This is one of the things that Path of Fire really lacked. I think was that. You beat Path of Fire, then you went right back to playing Heart of Thorns, basically, because there was like nothing to grind there, essentially, in that content. I don't think
I just imagine that people like DeRoyer, who have like all the achievements, whenever they release one of these new really grindy achievements, he's just like, God dang it, and flips his desk and sits down and gets to work on it, not happy at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a sense, I guess, yeah, like roadmap, definitely something they need to capitalize more on in the future. I think one thing that stood out for me in the roadmap was the fact that they kind of, if you notice, like they promoted WW and PvP bonus weeks in all 3 months. Like you're going to get one in May for both game modes, June and July as well. And it's kind of like they're trying to get the player base to maybe shift into those game modes for those weeks, at least to try it out. Maybe they're trying to get more people involved in WW who've never done it before. Likewise with PvP. And again, more reason on why they should try and get more of that things going on, because like we said, it kind of gets people more engaged in the game, right? Sometimes, like Muk said, you need that carrot on a stick approach, and some people like that's how they operate, right? I don't fault them. Some people feel like there should be an incentive on why I play the game, and that's a good opinion. Like and then there's some people who are just very content, and they will find a way to make the game enjoyable for them, right? So before we wrap up to roadmap, we'll probably talk more about this in a bit. How about we take a step back and discuss the balance patch, all right? Because this topic, I feel like I've seen both of your streams. I didn't cover this, but I've seen both of your streams, and very interesting points there. So I'll let you guys take off a little bit here, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot of bottled up aggression on these balance notes.
All right, so I think I'm going to have less to say than you. You mind if I start?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Hit me with it. Lay it on me.
So I definitely consider myself just a professional casual. Like I'm a casual player who just plays a lot, but I'm still pretty stupid. And I feel like you know a lot about the theory crafting of like the ins and outs, like what this small change is going to do for these classes and stuff like that. And I respect that. But like I'll say the biggest thing I was excited about when I looked at the stuff, and I even said this when at the beginning, I said, coming from many years of WoW, the biggest thing I'd like to see is that they spread the jobs out a little bit. Like in WoW, there was a time period where the only way to get the stamina buff, the plus hit point buff, was to have a priest in the party. And later they were like, all right, there's people that don't have priest friends. Let's give it to warlocks too. The only way to get bloodlust was with shamans. All right, we're going to make a copy of it called Time Warp. We're going to give it to mages too. And I was like, I'd love to see that. So when I saw that scrappers got quickness, and we're hoping it's going to be 100% uptime. I know the community is kind of unsure right now. And that Mesmers were getting a 10-man alacrity option. I was very happy about that. I was like, nice, more options for group composition. I hope, if everything works out. But to me, that was one of the most exciting parts. There were a lot of little buffs and nerfs there that are going to have lots of changes that they're going to make. But I was so happy just to see some more jobs getting spread around. I wouldn't mind if Thief got something. I laughed at the Thief, and they're like, Thief needs more diversity. We killed Boon Thief. But yeah, so I'll let you go into the nitty-gritty details, but I was ecstatic just to see some more people getting jobs that they didn't have, which might lead to some composition variety in the future.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with that, right? Like the biggest thing with this balance patch is incomplete, right? Like this is incomplete. Because if we look at those, if you look at the quick change, right? Like Scrapper is in a really weird spot, I think, in PV. It's going to be a little bit like Quickness Firebrand or like Chronos. It's going to do like some damage and give quickness now, or probably or heal and give quickness. But the thing is, are you really going to want to take that? Like, is that really what a lot of people are going to take? I mean, I guess if you're like a really big Scrapper fan, then you can. But I'm looking at Scrapper, I'm looking at Firebrand, I'm looking at Chrono, and I'm thinking, yeah, I think the quickness is like only like the first step in the road between bridging the gaps between these things. Like,
sure,
PvE,
there's other stuff.
PvE is like mega power crept. Okay, we're talking mega power crept, like Omega power crept. Like there are some bosses in raids now that can barely fight you. They could it honestly feels bad. Like when I fight certain raid bosses, I feel like I'm bullying people at this point because of just how overstacked everything is within the game. And and so you're gonna need to either strip a lot of these mechanics away or add a lot of these other mechanics as well. Because if you look at Scrapper, it can heal pretty well. Right? Okay, that's pretty good. And now it can give quickness and it can probably do damage as well at the same time. But then, you look at something like Firebrand, it's like, oh, I'm going to do damage and I'm going to give quickness. And I'm also going to have healing, even if I'm playing DPS because I have Tome 2. And
stability and Aegis if needed.
Exactly. I have one of the most busted, overpowered healing skills in the entire game, right? Like with my instinct. And now, by the way, even more busted, thanks to a slightly ill-conceived mantra change, in my opinion, but we can get to that a little bit later, right? And you're talking about spreading the jobs out. Then explain this to me, okay? Why on earth did they give Alacrity to the original Alacrity class again? Like, okay, you know what? Change my mind. That was the worst possible thing they could have done with Alacrity, giving it Mirage, right? How? Why? Like, guys, do you guys not remember when Alacrity was Mesmer only with Chronomancer before they turned it into a boon? Like, why Mirage? I don't understand. Like, it wasn't like Mirage was like exactly bad either. Like, Mirage had its usages. It was like it was kind of like a niche pick, right? For obviously confusion-focused bosses and confusion-focused encounters. But why does it need Alacrity now? Like, you could have given that to anything. Hey, like Thief could have got Alacrity or some weird stuff. Because yeah, you're right that Boon Thief got a bit of a slap, but Boon Thief was stupid, right? Like, because Boon Thief was a gimmick, right? It only worked if you have this exact steel exactly in a raid, right? Exactly here.
Yeah, it was like 3 or 4 boss fights.
And that's not good design, right? Like, yeah, it's balanced, right? It's like, oh, yeah, okay, Thief can play support on these exact bosses, but that's not because of Thief, right? That's because of an exact gimmick that we've tacked onto this boss to make it work. It's not good design. And so, yeah, like, in my opinion, Thief just straight up needs either like a massive trait line rework or a new elite spec to be a support. So, look, any Thief mains in the chat, you guys had better get used to being a healer in the next X Pack, because I think that's what's coming. Watch out. Same with you, Warriors. Okay?
Did any Thief really ask for this? Who really asked for this? But also, here's an argument like I was trying to make, and in a way, I guess it makes sense. In a way, it doesn't make sense. So one of the things is like their balance. The reason why this balance patch doesn't make sense now is because it's probably balancing the elite specs you're expected to get in of dragons, right? But the problem is it leaves us a little hanging until the expansion. If this is the only balance patch we get this year before the expansion, there's a lot of months of basically a kind of like a lack of focus for some classes because of this, right? And some classes just basically overtake other classes, right? And
you saying that though reminds me of that PvP patch they did last year where they made some traits become 300-second cooldowns so that they could replace them later. And
you know, the funny thing, Teapot was afraid that the balance patch last year was going to affect his Masters Arena tournament so heavily, and it was just like most classes that were overpowered got like a slap on the wrist, and that was the entire patch. That was it for Moto.
Thank God.
Well, so there are a few things here actually that are really worth talking about. They did actually say they are going to be following up on this in the roadmap, so big credit to ANET there. And in terms of like preparing for the expansion, they did do this. And if we look at some of the things they did here, particularly to retaliation, torment, and resistance. So retaliation is now resolution. It's just condition damage protection. Resistance now doesn't prevent you from it doesn't protect you from damaging conditions, only from impairing ones. And torment is basically reverse. So it does less damage when you're moving and more damage when you're standing still. So it's going to be normal damage when you're moving, more damage when you're standing still. Like, these things actually open up a huge amount of design space. And I think they're very intelligent changes, right? Because I know we kind of went hard on them, and I was going a bit hard on some of those changes. But in my opinion, that can be fixed. You can play with numbers and fix everything that I was just complaining about, basically. Like, that's easy. But what is really hard to get around is the fact that you can't give resistance to people because it's a broken effect, right? Total immunity to all Condi damage. Can you guys imagine if there was a boon that made you immune to power damage, right? Well, it's called playing Revenant, actually. But, aside from that, right?
Thank you. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one saying that.
But that aside, this is ridiculous, right? That would be so busted if that was the case. It would be so disgustingly strong. And retail, yeah, you guys like retail? You guys like hitting a guardian and then you just die, right? Because the guy's like standing there healing itself and like, oh, I'm dead. No, what a disaster. Yeah, these are really good design changes. And torment. Okay, Torment, let's not even get into that. Torment is probably one of the most hated conditions in the entire game, I would say. Like, maybe after, like, weakness, because it is a lose-lose. You either stand still to counterplay the Torment and die, because not moving in PvP is not a very smart idea, or you move and take loads of extra damage and die. So, yeah, they've actually made this a lot more interesting there. I would say it actually makes it less interesting in PvE, because I kind of like the idea that, if a boss moves a lot, then my Torment's good. Now it's like, my Torment's good because bosses are big and fat and don't move that much. So that's kind of the casualty of war, is actually PvE here, in my opinion. And that Condi Scourge benchmark, here we go. That's going to be a good one next patch. But yeah, I think they have actually done some good groundwork here. They can give resistance to more people. They can help out classes that struggle with Condis more, because they can give them resolution instead of making them immune. The biggest example of this was Condi Herald in PvP. Condi Herald has had this like really big reputation for going like, oh, I've got perma resistance, by the way. Nice. Have fun. And now they have opened a bit more design space. So classes that, again, like struggle to cleanse can now have some damage reduction, right? Now you can have, you don't have like this ridiculous thing with retail where you can just like porcupine yourself to death. Now torment isn't going to be oppressive. These are great changes. Now the downside of this is that they didn't actually, and this is what I meant by incomplete earlier, they didn't actually compensate for any of this. So instead of just like saying, oh, Condi Rev, you play a little bit differently now in PvP. It's more like Condi Rev, uninstall, right? And the same thing with Condi Necro and Mirage.
I'm sure they'll be fine.
Right? At the same time. Well, I mean, yeah, it will be playable, but it will be like, yikes, like this is way worse because they're losing their mitigation with resistance because that's being nerfed significantly now, so it doesn't hide them from the damage, only from the movement impairing stuff, and their damage is getting like slapped into a billion pieces. So yeah, like that's going to be a big nerf. And bear in mind, they added resolution too. So in other words, every Condi build is now going to have to deal with resolution. Okay, and they do less damage, except for bleeding mills. For example, hey, you know who wins here? That's right, guys. It's your boy, the Rangers. Okay, the Rangers, your Soul Beast, right? Your Condi Soul Beast, your Condi Druid, that kind of stuff. You're all good. Like you're good to go. Well, except for resolution, I guess. So you're still sad.
I think, but wouldn't you think like maybe increasing burst damage on Condi builds might be okay? Because like there's a lot of things.
I was talking about PvP. You're talking about PvE now?
No,
like the exposed.
No, like in PvP, because like in PvE. In general, in PvP, like there's a lot of power builds that most of the time will have the big burst damage, right? The initial combo damage. But I feel like Condi's always like they kind of like build up in the last 4 seconds into the fight, and sometimes that 4 or 5 seconds kind of makes a difference if it's in a team fight or if you're trying to rest somebody. So,
but I think that's just one of the pros of like, okay, this is coming from someone who likes to play Condi builds. I'm okay with the fact that I'm not bursty. Like I chose to play condition. I have a smaller amount of stats. Like, if you're power, you gotta build power and precision and ferocity to get those big numbers. Condi, you've only got to build condition damage. So I feel like a pro is you've got a easier stat budget. Con is you have a little bit of ramp up time, and I think that's okay. I don't have a problem with that design.
That is the correct answer.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad.
No. Condi shouldn't be bursty, and in particular, it shouldn't be overly spammy. It's the same thing with boons, right? Like this has been introduced over the course of the game in every game mode, but you see this particularly negatively affecting the game in PvP and World versus World. Like you don't get like 3 or 4 Condis on you. You get like 10 Condis on you, and you don't get like 1 boon on you. You get a billion boons on you. Like this has been tuned down a lot in World, but in PvP, like in PvP, a lot of support specs are like, oof, like a little bit cut down. But the thing is that they're really cut down, but they're still really strong because of how good boons are. Like and Noreen like added loads of them and added loads of conditions too to the game. So you get bursts like ultra hard already, and yeah, conditions shouldn't be bursty. They should be very, very slow. The exception to this would be confusion. Confusion is the one rule breaker here because it can burst you because you can punch yourself in the face and die. So that's the one exception. But everything else, no, you should not really be able to burst with Condi. It's a bit unhealthy to have something like that. Like there are exceptions here. The exception is Burn Guard. Burn Guard is kind of allowed to do this because it only has 1 Condi. So, if you die to a Burn Guard, it's like, oh, well, I mean, come on. It's like 1 Condi. It's not exactly.
I feel like there's a few thief builds that have a bit of Condi burst, like the pistol ones. They can show up and just overwhelm you, and you're just like, oh, Jesus Christ, like in like 2 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, this is you're lucky. Yeah, you should be happy you did not play in the era or didn't play as much anyway, where this build was actually way stronger. Condi Thief used to be absolutely disgusting. It still is, and it's actually getting a bit of a slap this patch actually with its Grandmaster trait being reworked, so it gives bleeding instead of confusion, which is definitely a bit of an oof for sure for Condi Thief. But yeah, like this build has historically been a big problem for PvP because it's very uninteractive, it's very bursty, right? And it just destroys you, right? Absolutely, yeah. Like Condi Thief is the perfect example of why Condis shouldn't be overly bursty, because it is extremely unfun to play against, right? Is it beatable? Yes, but it's unbelievably unfun. And by the way, I would say the same thing about power builds here. I'm not like biased against Condi. If you have like a build that one-shots you out of stealth, not fun. Right? Okay. Not entertained to play against that in any way.
2-3 hits and you're dead, basically, kind of thing. You're already down, like wondering what hit you. I think, but again, it goes back to the whole thing, right? Like while this build, a lot of the questions they kind of raised with this balance patch is, again, do you feel like, I mean, is there a reason that maybe we get another one down the line, or more likely we just end up with this and we just have to carry out the expansion? And that's the thing, like if this balance patch makes sense after the expansion, because we're like, oh, these elite specs, these elite specs that just got released, this is why they did those changes in April, or was it May? It's gonna be next week, so in May. So like, is it that sense, or do you feel like it might fall flat? And because anyways, you know, just as much as any MMO that comes out, right? Like whenever new builds get released, new elite specs, new professions, the game's gonna be broken for about a month before they fix everything, right? So do you think it's of any use for them to prepare from now, and it might just work in the expansion, or do you think the expansion will still deal with more broken specs, more broken traits, more broken conditions and specific skills? So what's your take on that?
Broken numbers are fine. Broken design is not broken numbers are fine. Broken design is not fine. I think these changes make sense now, by the way. Like the only confused changes are Warrior. I think 2 developers worked on the Warrior changes and they didn't look at each other's work and just did some random stuff basically for Warrior. But yeah, like
I'm laughing because it sounds accurate.
Yeah, it makes like all the changes like are logical. It's just that they need, there's like a second half missing, right? We're missing the second half, and we're probably going to see that like a little bit later, right? You know, hopefully in a few months when the next patch comes through. But if we're talking about the special, we're talking about the expansion and the elite specs. The most important thing is that they just don't overstack the design. I mean, like I'm going to use the word nonsense here to describe. You know what? You've sold me. Okay, I've been watching a lot of Mukluk. Okay, guys. And he's got me on the Guardian hate train. Let's bash Firebrand some more, guys. Let's go. All right, let's just swing the hammer at it. Like, Firebrand is nonsense, guys, okay? Like, you have... I mean, compare it to Core Guardian. Core Guardian F1 is like, oh, everyone can burn a little bit now, guys. Okay? And Core Guardian F2 is, oh, I can heal a little bit, guys. Maybe a bit of cleanse if I trade it, by the way. Only if I trade it. And 3 is like, oh, you guys can have one Aegis. One, right? One of them. Okay, enjoy that Aegis, guys. But then what is Firebrand? Like, Firebrand has this like absurdly overstacked design, and it was its ultimate downfall as well, because at the big Firebrand has reflect, it has resistance, it has stability, it has taunt, it has CC, right? It has stability, right? You've got healing there, you've got cleansing, you've got loads of boon access there, like loads of actual damage as well on the F1 tome. And this led to a very, very big problem particularly in every game mode, really, actually. So I won't say particularly in PvP, but PvP is where you saw this storyline play out. Like the inherent design of something like Firebrand or Scourge, by the way. Scourge is the one that no one complains about, but is honestly far worse than Firebrand. And look, then we haven't even got to Mirage yet, by the way. Like, let's not even go there. But like a lot of these things have incredibly strong design that make them impossible to balance. Like Firebrand is either going to be insanely oppressive or it's going to be nerfed to the point where it's useless, right? Like that's basically what's going to happen. Like you either have to make it a bit more one-dimensional and make the utility not good, or you have to reduce the damage a lot on it, right? And make it significantly worse. Because as long as you have Tome of Resolve and Tome of Courage, right? Firebrand is always going to be like the cheese option. It's always going to be easy cheesy. So even if you have higher DPS options, which by the way you do, you can play higher DPS things in Firebrand in raids. Very easily, and in Fractals too, you won't do that. And the reason you won't do that is because it makes everything a joke. Like it breaks the game. And this is what I think ArenaNet really needs to be careful about. Like Path of Fire in particular introduced a lot of game integrity destroying mechanics. In particular, I would say Firebrand and Scourge are the two really big examples of this. Heal Scourge is a build that is by far the most overpowered build in PvE, not even close. It is not, there is nothing that even compares to how broken that build is, and it's because of Scourge existing that build exists.
Dude, what are you talking about? I love taking my Scourge with 9 complete movies to Bone Skinner and then one-shotting the boss with 107 reses. It's fine.
Yeah. It's fun, and obviously in PvE it's not an issue, right? Like I actually don't mind stuff like that in PvE. If that's in PvE, honestly fine. Like I think it raises some issues in raid CMs, because if I can just like walk over a raid CM because I have this really, really OP build, probably not good for the health of the game and like the kind of like the reward, like, you know, the effort versus reward kind of thing within the game there as well. But this is the thing I really want Arena to focus on. Don't release broken design. Like you can have some insane numbers, have every class on release do 50k DPS. That's irrelevant. Like you can just nerf that like 2 weeks later. People can have their fun, do some ridiculous boss kills, right? And like one-shot people in PvP. Sure, right? Like that's fine. That's not an issue. The problem is where you have Mirage, right? And Mirage, a mechanic so broken that they had to actually remove a dodge roll, and it was still oppressive, right? And it actually turned out that it's still quite strong. And you started to see play again with one dodge, right? They nerfed everything about it. They gutted every trait line on Mesmer in PvP. They slapped it. They punched it like Core Mesmer, dead. Chronomancer, dead. Mirage, still there. I am still here, guys, because my profession mechanic is fundamentally broken, right? And that's what you've got to avoid, right? Otherwise, you'll never be rid of these things, and they will massively compromise the other specs as well. Because obviously, you know, if you have an elite spec, it is to a certain extent reliant on the core classes, right? As well, like, you know, it does have interactions with the other trait lines, and this means that you might have to nerf a trait line to nerf an elite spec, and this is a really big problem because it means that you end up annihilating the other options. Like in your quest to get rid of Mirage, you also just delete the other options as well from the other builds, right? And that's a really big issue. And that is my there you go. I've ranted about this for long enough because I feel very, very strongly about this. I think Path of Fire really compromised the integrity of Guild Wars 2. It was fun, but I think it really compromised the integrity of the game modes. Every single game mode was punched by the release of Path of Fire because of how powerful the design was on a lot of these specializations. And when I say design, I mean like the profession mechanic, tomes, Mirage Cloak, shades, and so on and so on and so on.
Don't just kind of two small segues there. Talk about the tomes. Yeah, remember they also said that each elite spec should have a drawback, like when they made it so that Soul Beasts couldn't pet swap anymore, or Druids got minus 20% to all their pet stats. I'm still waiting to find out what Firebrand's drawback is. They're like, here's 15 additional buttons on your function keys. We'll come back about that drawback later. I don't know what theirs is yet.
That's that's the drawback, is that Firebrand is the baby of the game. You cannot.
Is it your fingers get tangled?
Yeah. So actually, there was a very interesting suggestion that Kiba was thinking on how honestly specs should have operated in the game, and they can still do this. I mean, it's not like they can't change this now. And he feels like right now, because I mean, in general, right, specializations in this game are each a different class, right? Like you could argue that Guardian, Ranger, all the classes basically are, you know, multiplied by another 2 specs, which are they're each separate class. And because of that, this is what leads to a lot of these balances. You take something from this, you basically give it to 2 other classes. You buff something here, you basically remove the role of 3 other classes. And rather than have specializations basically be another class entirely on their own, why not have the specialization in which, in a sense, would make... I think this makes the most... in terms of like how this should be done, I think this makes most sense, is have the specializations be enhancements of a core class. So that way you're, and I think this should have been how they implemented it, but they just, I guess, ended up creating multiple classes for one core class, which makes it very difficult to balance. So instead of having specializations be a different class, have them just be enhancements to the core class in a different way. So that way you don't end up with all these multiple classes that you're balancing, because ultimately, you know, you're balancing what? You have 9 classes in the game, you know, multiply that by 3. You're basically balancing 27 classes at this point, where if there were enhancements of a core class, there's still just 9 classes. And yeah, what would be your take on that? Like if there were just enhancements towards a core class versus the way that they are now?
That's a class by class thing. Like usually if I'm talking to brand new players and they're asking about like, oh, can I play Core Ranger at endgame? I might say like, well, you know, PvP, Core Ranger is fine. It has some very viable builds in PvP. In PvE, most people would say, okay, Core Ranger is DPS, Druid is a healer, Soul Beast is better DPS. You know, it's a straight up improvement to what that job is, that role. So it really, I think it depends on the class and it depends on the position they're playing.
I would fundamentally disagree with the idea that would even help or make it better. I think you can actually do this very, very well. A great example of this would actually be Reaper. Reaper is probably one of the best designed elite specs because it has a very clear drawback. You are now melee and your Shroud decays faster, but it plays out completely differently to Core Necromancer. and is a very, very different spec. So yeah, I think the way they have their design is actually good in some places. It's just that it falls flat in a few other areas. And I think like the multi-game mode thing is a really good call there by Muck there as well, because is Scourge inherently bad or like inherently problematic in PvE? A little bit, right? But I think Scourge is fine. I kind of like carry builds. I think having carry builds is completely okay in your video game, and Scourge is that, and so is Firebrand to an extent. But that's okay to have that. The issue is where you have this interfere with the competitive game modes, because it's like when you have a mechanic about holding points, and I have shades that I can put on the point and then stand off the point and kill you with them. Yeah, that's maybe a little bit unhealthy, right? Probably shouldn't exist in that game mode. So I think as long as ArenaNet kind of recognizes what's healthy design for a certain game mode and what should be within the parameters of that game mode, you can actually go pretty wild with the design, right? Like you can be out there, in my opinion. You just have to be a little bit careful with stuff that's not going to completely crush everything in the game mode that you're targeting there, right? Not every elite spec needs to be good in every game mode. The exception being open world. I would say that everything should be good for open world content, and then for like the more specialized content like raids, fractals, PvP, world versus world. That's where you might say, oh, if you're going to play NG in world versus world, you're going to want to play a scrapper. Right, because that's what NG does in world versus world, right? Or in PvP, like if you're going to play Guardian, you're going to want to play. Well, I mean, that's a terrible. that's a bad example right now. Yeah, if you're going to play Guardian,
we're trying to fight against.
Well, okay, if you're gonna want to play Guardian in PvP, then you want to play Core Guard right now. Actually, funny enough, because it's funny we talked about drawbacks, right? On Firebrand Tome, tomes are worse than Core Guard virtues in PvP right now. Because they have tomes don't have cast times, so they're slow, whereas instant cast, because this is actually there is kind of a drawback here. Like virtues are instant cast, they have much shorter cooldowns, and they also have like a very, very big radius on them as well. So there is actually a subtle drawback there with these things. It turns out that tomes are actually very, very bad, and this was what I was alluding to earlier. By the way, Firebrand tomes are bad because they just took all the numbers and said, right, those numbers are all 1 second now. And all of a sudden, yeah, it's not good anymore, obviously, right? But that's the fundamental issue with Firebrand's design, right? It's either going to be a strict upgrade over Core Guardian, or it's going to be absolute trash. And that's where it is right now. Like Firebrand is honestly one of the worst specs in PvP right now. Feels bad. Like, it died. There was a good hybrid build for a while, but I'm afraid it died for Burn Dragon Hunter's sins. Permeating Wrath. And it had to go. It had to go, unfortunately. But you know what's actually really funny about that is that the DH build was very unhealthy, but the Firebrand build was actually kind of okay. It had a lot of weaknesses in a way that the Trap DH didn't. Like Trap DH was mostly like very, very strong because of the rune, right? And the damage was way too high. But this is kind of like a really difficult thing to balance for that exact reason. Like Firebrand basically got completely caught in the crossfire, even though it wasn't super great at the time. It got eviscerated because Burn DH was so strong.
I was going to touch on that earlier. You mentioned that with Mesmers. You were like, yeah, we nerfed Core Mesmer, we nerfed Chrono, and Mirage is still standing. And I was having flashbacks to when there was a period of time about 2 years ago when Sikkim Sniper was running rampant in World to World.
Very good.
There, I was playing my newbie Druid, and I was playing around with like a Shouts build. And then they're like, all right, wow, these guys are doing really well. Okay, all Shouts are now commands. Y'all can't use any runes related to Shouts. And it was just like, Sikkim Sniper went from here to here, and then like every other Ranger build that was like here just fell off the bottom. I was like, oh, come on. It's like we got nerfed with a blindfold and a shotgun. Just got caught in it. I've had that same feeling.
Then you go back to Firebrand, which actually in World vs. World, Firebrand, they've been trying to come up with a meta that doesn't need Firebrands, and it's just too good of a class that no Zerg will ever run without them. And that's been the meta since Path of Fire, right? So, yeah, it's... Honestly, there's a lot of ways they could probably try and get the mode refreshing with different builds, but reality is that when you build a class like that just... I mean, talk about the burn stacks, right? I mean, the fact that you just put 4 Guardians, you don't even need a full, like, 6-7 Guardians. You just need 4 Guardians in a Zerg. They'll do enough damage to the opposing Zerg. That's really where it is on for Firebrand. So I think like in a sense, they want to try and balance a lot of things, but the fact that I don't know, I think maybe is it fundamentally the class is just hard to balance in the sense that it's either too weak or too strong, because there's never been a in the middle type of build. I feel like for Guardian, it's always like it's pretty up there in terms of like optimal builds, or it's just maybe it falls a little flat. It's never in the middle of like there's like 8 builds that can compete with it kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is exactly what I meant. It gets carried by its design. And in World vs. World, I actually want to slightly correct you there. You said that it's been since Path of Fire. This is actually not true. It's since the literally day 1 of Guild Wars 2.
Well, no, I'm talking about Firebrand spec in general. Firebrand.
Yeah, but I mean, it's but the thing is, in World vs. World, Firebrand isn't as such the problem. It's actually Core Guardian that's way too strong. Like, if that makes any sense, right? Like, Core Guardian is what makes like Firebrand so oppressive, because you have stand your ground basically, like, and you are the only one who can do this. And there is no other class that can really do this to an effective level. The obvious thing would be Soul Beast, and Soul Beast, it's really funny like how strong Guardian is because of the versatility it can provide. It can be like a great healer. It has good CC, right? It has resistance, stability, Aegis, all this kind of good stuff. It's got so much versatility that it can actually defeat unbelievably powerful mechanics. And if you look at something like Dolyak stance on Soul Beast, it is an unremovable like damage reduction and immunity to movement impairing effects, and you get stability off that as well. And it's still not good, right? Enough to play in World vs. World, right? Like, you can have this ridiculous skill, and it still isn't good enough to actually replace a Guardian in a World vs. World Zerg. Now, a big part of this is because I think ArenaNet kind of chose Soul Beast's weapon very poorly. Because the thing about some of these specs in World vs. World in particular is that it's very hard to make a build, right, for a Zerg, right? Like, people have tried. You can role play as an arrow cart. That's about as close as you can get. But the thing about stuff like Ranger and Thief and Mesmer to an extent here as well, like, Mesmer is still very good in World vs. World, but it's because it has like a few really good skills. You don't have like a full build. Like, if you're playing a Mesmer, it's like a very dehumanizing experience. You're like, oh, they only want me for my utility skills, man. That's all they want. And that's exactly what it is, right? Like, if you are basically a walking utility bot. And this is a problem with World vs. World, because it like encourages you to stack things essentially just by the nature of the game. It's like, oh, you want to have the best of this, as much of it as you can, right? And for a very, very long time, that's been basically Necro and Guardian, because what else can really corrupt boons outside of Necro? Nothing, right? Hey, maybe you know what? Let's give that to Guardian next X-Pack. Let's go. I'm ready for the Dark Paladin, like 50-man Guardian squads, right? Firebrands combined with 3 Dark Paladins, every single subgroup. Nice. That's what I'm talking about, right? There's the content coming through. But yeah, like, the thing about World vs. World is I think they can definitely shake it up. They just have to give, in particular, stability to other classes, and they need to give builds to other classes. It needs to be a well-rounded thing that does something. It can't just be, hey, Soul Beast, you can like longbow auto-attack people and give stability. No, because you're competing with Firebrand, which is healing, CCing, cleansing, giving stability, giving Aegis, is very, very tanky, has reflect, has resistance,
it basically
right?
does everything,
I like that you just suggested the most absurd, overpowered buff to Soul Beast, and then you immediately were like, let me show you how that's not good enough to beat a Guardian, and you're right, and I hate it.
It's not a buff that's in the game right now. The Dolyak stance thing that exists.
You said stability on auto attack longbow 1.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah. I mean, yeah, like, even if they did something like that, it probably wouldn't be good enough. Yeah, I mean, like, because you don't have a cohesive build, you wouldn't be able to create a cohesive build like with this. It just isn't good enough. And to be honest, I think they can shake it up. I would really like to see like Soul Beasts be in World vs. World, like to kind of fulfill the stability role, right? Like of World vs. World, because that's what's really lacking right now. Ultimately, like the thing that's really lacking is the stability role. Because if we look at everything else, like damage, you can play Weaver, right? You could even play Thief, right? In smaller scale stuff, like, not as long as it's not like mega crazy, like Staff Daredevil, you're gonna slap people with that, right? You can do that. Even in a like a slightly, in a full on like squad setting, you can do it. It's not as good as it used to be. It used to be very strong in GVG stuff, but you can play that. But and you can kind of go across the board. Like Mesmer sees play with like Veils and Portals, right? And some other Gravwell, Focus Pulls, some utility stuff there as well. Obviously, you've got your Engie, you've got your Scrapper there to cleanse stuff, you've got your Necros to do damage, right? Your Guardians to heal stuff, right? Most professions can actually see some kind of value in a decent sized world versus world group. It's just that Guardian in particular and Necro are pretty much, you aren't getting around those, right? You are not getting around those two specs. And Warrior and Rev to an extent too. Like Rev, I didn't mention them because it just goes without saying, right? Like you're not getting around that because of how good they are in this situation. Like Rev, maybe a little bit less so because it's more of like me hit you very hard with hammer now, rather than anything else. But yeah, like it's difficult. Like I think just loosening up stability and giving some stab access to other professions will probably be the way to go. But that's a very delicate balancing act because you've got to give it to the right profession, otherwise it's going to be worse.
Again, it's also one of the, I guess, problems of having a quote-unquote non-holy trinity is that you kind of want every class, in a way, playing both a support role that it can support itself and then also a very good role in the fight. But again, there's some things that get done in a way where, one class ultimately takes the entire job of every other class, and the other class is just like, I can do this, and then this one class is just like, yeah, but I can also do 20 other things that you can't. So it's like, I feel like kind of maybe is one drawback of the Holy Trinity, right? Because you can't maybe try and get everything as balanced as possible without one class ultimately standing on top. And for me, Guardian, personally, I think like Guardian in a sense, you take away stability, you take away any other boon that Guardian does, it feels like this class is meant to do all these. I don't know, maybe it's because like Guardian for a sense has been doing this for a long time, but it just feels like you take any other boon from Guardian and it's like, this class, this trait is specifically like, this class makes sense on why it has this trait. And it kind of like, again, when you go like, yeah, Ranger or Soul Beast can do stability, but Guardian can do this, and then times the other things, right? It's just the fact that like, you feel like Guardian without any of these traits feels incomplete, even though it shouldn't be already overpowered to this point. So.
Something I'm looking forward to after the patch notes hit is the first time in PvP that a Herald that didn't read the patch notes uses that skill that pulls all allied conditions to themselves and gives themselves resistance. And then they just implode like a black hole.
There are going to be some great clips. I'm ready for the clips of that. That's going to be some good stuff.
I know that I'm going to accidentally do that with Signet of Renewal, which is like the Ranger equivalent, where they send all the conditions to their pet and the pet gets resistance, and I'm just going to watch the pet just... it's just puff of fur. Like, oh crap, I forgot.
So we're kind of on this balanced discussion. I think we covered some pretty much a summary of what we all kind of thought about this. I think I mean, if we just made a podcast on balanced discussion alone, that's like 5 hours. So to kind of just get into the next topic of the podcast, what do you guys feel like the roadmap ending towards End of Dragons, and really what are some of the features or maybe some things you speculate will be talked about in the July 27th announcement on Guild Wars 2 stream? What do you think we expect to see? Like full Path of Fire levels of like they revealed everything in that one stream, or do you feel like they'll release something but then there's more up and coming things down the line? Because there's either they drop everything in one go or they build up towards it to the expansion. And what would you guys think?
I've got two guesses. One is maybe elite spec teasers, like unfinished elite spec ideas and stuff. And the second is whatever the new... How can I explain this? Hot had gliding, Path of Fire had mounts, EOD has a what?
Cash cow!
Cash cow.
No, that's already there. It's the gem store. The new thing.
Yeah.
Or we all just gonna get like trucks.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, I think we're going to get even more than that. I think we're talking release date. We're talking, we're talking elite specs. They're going to probably drop them. I mean, they even actually, again, they did actually allude to this a little bit in the roadmap. They say that around that time, you're going to be hearing about the EOD beta, which is exactly what happened with Path of Fire. We had this Path of Fire beta where they let us play the specs in the game, like in the live game, right before things are going to test them out and try stuff out and make a little beta character and make whatever you want and play play that kind of stuff. So I think you're going to get info about that. They're going to tease all the specs. They're going to do a little story teaser probably with like a bit of a cutscene. We're going to see a lot of shots of, you know, the pretty weeaboo architecture, right? That's going to be fun. There's going to be loads of crazy stuff, right? You know, they're going to go berserk, right? You know, like Ainut's going to go berserk. I think they're dropping all
the not cultured, but the weeaboo architecture.
Yeah. Yeah, they're dropping all. Seriously, I think they're dropping everything on July 27th. Again, I don't know for sure, but I think we're not looking at a long period of downtime here. I think this whole like lead up there is extremely calculated. Like Ainut, you know, we always accuse them of not being risk takers, but in my opinion, Arena is like the most loose cannon company out there. Like these guys, they're just gonna announce it and drop it like in a month and a half. Like, do you guys think it's going to be July? Then you wait 3 months? No, dude, like, are you kidding me? They're like, oh yeah, guys, it's coming out next week, by the way. I mean, it probably won't be that extreme, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, yeah, September, by the way, boom, there you go. I wouldn't even write off the table. They'd just say, oh yeah, it's coming out literally in a month from now, guys, like at the end of August, which would really, you know, it really sucks because I want to play New World, and you know, New World's coming out at the exact same time, so unlucky, I guess. But you know, like that, that I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. Like I'm guessing September is going to be the release. But if they said, oh yeah, by the way, it's coming out in 28 days, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's that, yeah, I expected that. That's Ainut. Yeah, it's going to be big. It's going to be their big PR bomb. They're going to drop that bomb, and I think that's, you know, to kind of defend.
I'm having deja vu. I feel like we had this conversation last year, and you guessed July, and I guessed December 31st because I was a naysayer, and then now it's 2021. So should we just say the same things again?
Yeah, it basically is. But here's the thing, right? They announced April of last year that they were in development, right? And we talked about, like, this was the same question last year, right? Like, how far are they in the development stage from that announcement, right? And we said, Mukluk, I think you said, like, they should at least have been 2 months in it, or, you know, at least there should have been 1 or 2 months that they already started, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't have announced something that they haven't even begun on. So assuming that they were already working on this from, like, March or Feb of 2020, right? And you can even argue this was under the works in January or maybe something, right? I would say it wouldn't be surprising, like Teapot says, if it's like, oh, you know what, it's dropping on the anniversary, or it's dropping in a month from now, or from the announcement, or 2 months from now. Well, because they've had significant time to develop this expansion, right? The only other time we've seen this was with Heart of Thorns, which they probably gave about a year as well in development, and Path of Fire was probably less than a year. So I wouldn't be surprised, like Teapot says. And I think, honestly, this year is a must for them, right? Because like you have New World, you have a lot of other games that are trying to release in the same time frame, and if you release in 2022, chances are people are just already more integrated into the new MMOs that are coming out, and they need this time frame to compete and attract and give a reason for people to just stick around in End of Dragons and then build after that kind of thing.
I don't know when they're planning on doing that Steam released, but that will be really big as well whenever they get around to that.
Yeah, probably after the expansion. Steam release, I think they're gonna fix all the things that might not be quite right with the expansion, then say, oh yeah, game's on Steam, by the way. That will be my guess, I think. With
that will be big. Like a Terra, Black Desert Online, that Star Wars one I forget the name of, all of their populations more than doubled when they went to Steam, and free-to-play players could give it a try. So I think that will be really big as long as they prepare the servers for it.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, you know, if there's anything that is really, really robust and reliable about Guild Wars 2, it is actually the servers, funnily enough. So we're in good hands there, I suppose. We are in good hands in that regard.
Yeah, it's I feel like with the expansion features and the things that they could maybe offer to kind of hook players into the expansion, someone was saying, well, what kind of game-changing features can they do, right? And if you look at Heart of Thorns had gliding and the mastery system, which is, I guess, a game-changing feature into the game. Probably the biggest game-changing feature was Heart of Thorns, just because it's the original expansion that built the mastery point system. And then you go look at Path of Fire, and mounts was the game-changing feature for that, right? That was the feature that kind of has changed the way we play Guild Wars 2 now, right? So what possible things can they really do in End of Dragons? I don't know what other game-changing feature they can do besides, at this point, maybe a new class, which I don't think is possible, or a new race, which again, they either make the race have its own playable starter zones, or the race starts at level 80. And I think that's really the only game-changing feature. I could be mistaken. If there's something you guys think is more game-changing than that, let me know. But it's just based on what they can add to just enhance the game in that level. It's very, yeah, player housing, better engine. The thing is, player housing, I don't think it's to answer someone in chat, player housing, the thing is we have guild halls in a sense and home instance, and I feel like player housing would kind of just be a feature.
Yeah, but I think we know that when someone says player housing, they mean a customizable home instance. They mean like a home instance with the guild hall tech in it where they can move things around. That's probably what they want.
Wouldn't you just work on guild halls to be, I guess, better?
But then they have to make friends, Guild MO.
Yeah.
Well, then Arena have to actually talk about guilds. I mean, look, I mean, that is a dirty word here. I'll have you know. Okay, like
It's those things that are warring each other, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I think so. There may be a few of those. I think when you have a conflict like that, I believe you call it GVG, but that's ruining world versus world. So we certainly can't have any of that. But yeah, no, I think player housing is probably my guess as well. I mean, again, Arena is crazy. Weirdly enough, I would not have predicted mounts because it's like we have waypoints, guys. Why do we need mounts? We don't, right? But yeah, like Arena, we're like, yeah, we're gonna do mounts, and I would probably say that player housing is like my best guess, but who knows what it's going to be. I think player housing, by the way, would be very, very lucrative because ArenaNet found out very quickly that mounts are extremely lucrative, right? It was, kind of like the backbone of a lot of the financing for Path of Fire. And there will be a feature like this in End of Dragons, and yeah, that's what I would predict it to be. But in terms of like gameplay hook, okay, look, can we not talk about this? Right, okay, I'm getting mad now, right? I'm getting mad because wait, you're saying like, oh, what's going to hook them into the game? What about the fact that the game's actually good?
Well,
right? Like,
no,
can we talk about that for a moment?
Features,
like,
right? When I say hook, I
who
don't
cares?
mean one thing
why,
that will hook you into the game. I mean like something that
why do
like
we need
is
that?
the expand, like HOT Mastery, POF had kind of mounts. What's another game changing feature specifically?
Who cares about that stuff?
One hook,
like, like who's like, oh yeah, guys, I play Guild Wars 2 for the masteries. Like, dude, no one says that. Like, yeah, seriously, he's laughing, right? He's going crazy. He's comedy
like,
central.
Oh my god, Icebrood
right?
Saga, Raven.
Yeah, yeah. I got it. Oh, it's so good. No, like, no, I mean, I don't think you need to like really worry about features too much with regards to this. I mean, no, I'm joking. I'm not actually mad. Okay, I love you.
I know.
Yeah, I love you. And hand over your Chak egg sacks. But yeah, no, it's just that yeah. I don't think they really need to worry about this stuff. Like, in my opinion, the biggest selling point of Guild Wars 2 is that it's one of the only MMOs that actually has good gameplay, right? Like other MMOs, like, oh, I'm going to cast my fireball, guys, right? Oh, wow, so much fun. In Guild Wars 2, you can dodge stuff. It's much more mobile. It's way more dynamic. There's loads of buttons to press. Like, you can do way more. Like, you're not often playing one role, right? You can be like a hybrid class. The game is very, very pretty, right? The game, it's good, right? It is a good video game. There's a lot of activities. There's no downtime, right? There's like no annoying grinds and like stuff like that. I mean, there are some time gates, but we don't talk about those. But yeah, like you don't need like these big features like to play the game. In my opinion, I think ArenaNet should really focus on what they do best, which is making a very, very good video game that's very ahead of its time mechanically. It's exactly what Guild Wars 2 is. I mean, look, can you guys believe this? Like, what's the competitor to World versus World in ESO?
You mean you mean in like other MMOs?
Yeah. Maybe
I know
ESO
has something similar.
I would say,
Black Desert Online comes to mind with their
I think World vs. World, in a sense, like ArenaNet did it better than other games. Someone's saying Conqueror's Blade. Yeah, but not really. That's still
where is that game?
Very small
like,
scale, I think.
Yeah, like where is that? Like, yeah, who Megalul, right? That's what that is, okay? Like, and yeah, you can talk about BDO. Listen, okay, BDO is a mob grinding simulator, and then sometimes someone kills you, right? Like that is what that game is. It's a fun game, right? But like to say that it's like a really big part of it is like this kind of like large scale PvP. I think it's a little bit disingenuous. You go and watch a lot of BDO streamers. They're running around in circles like grinding mobs like it's fucking PoE or something. Like that's what's going on.
It's like I feel like it's the most coordinated guilds in BDO that actually do the node wars with like the war elephants and stuff, and that is cool to watch, but it's a minority.
I think in terms of the game mode that like. What Teapot's trying to get at is the game mode itself, competitive game mode of servers, that really hasn't been implemented anywhere else really good. Like, this game probably does it better. And again, it also maybe, I don't know, maybe it also kind of goes back to the fact that, in a sense, Guild Wars 2, in my opinion, has the best and, best game, game combat mechanics out of all the other MMOs. It's just, once you play Guild Wars 2, you find it so hard to kind of go to other MMOs, right? Like, you go back to...
I agree with that.
You go back to World of Warcraft, you go back to BDO, and honestly, it's just, you kind of be like, I can't play this anymore, because Guild Wars 2 has really spoiled us with a very, very fluid combat game system.
Yeah, and also it just doesn't screw you over. Like, the game doesn't get in the way of you having fun. Like, the game just lets you have fun, and you can just do whatever you want, immediately. You don't have to, like, wait to have fun. You just go and play. And also, by the way, I do want to point out, guys, that if you're bringing up Arcade Unchained as an alternative to Guild Wars 2, you're kind of making my point for me, by the way. Okay, just, and PlanetSide as well. Okay, like, that is a very questionable thing to bring up. Okay, if you want to, like, say, oh, what's the alternative to Guild Wars 2? But it's not just World versus World. Like, compare the PvP in Guild Wars 2 to other MMOs. Like, PvP in MMOs is a joke, right? Like, in Guild Wars 2, not so, right? Like, like, where Guild Wars 2 actually, funnily enough, does fall down, like, is kind of like that kind of like really hardcore PvE experience, right? Which is where games like Final Fantasy and WoW can really, really shine. In that situation, with like that proper, Mythic Plus for the, which is basically like Blizzard said, hey, those fractals, those are a pretty good idea, aren't they? And then obviously the Mythic rating there as well, on Savage and Ultimates and Final Fantasy. These are great. These are great content. And that's something that I would love to see Guild Wars 2 actually focusing a little bit more on, because I think they could deliver great raid content. And they do. Like, the raids are a lot of fun in Guild Wars. But I think they could definitely be pushed and like made a little bit more appropriate for the way the game actually works, particularly on the harder difficulty settings there as well. But yeah, like, this is what I mean. Like, like the selling point of Guild Wars 2 is the game, right? Like, you don't need to go any further than that. Like, the game is a very, very good game, and you don't need to have this like big hook, in my opinion, because I think this is a bit of a trap that a lot of people fall into. Like, when they think about MMOs, they think, oh, I want my dopamine rush, bro. You're like a drug addict. Like, oh, give me my next hit, bro. Oh, I need my fix, bro. Oh, 3 DPS extra on that item, bro. It's like, are you kidding me? Like what happened to like actually enjoying gameplay? And like, this is where Guild Wars 2 really, really shines, I think. It doesn't really rely on that stuff. Like, to keep you playing the game, it doesn't rely on giving you like a purple item that does, 7 DPS more, or like it's going to make you pause a little bit better, on guildwars2logs.com. Like, everything that the game does, it's there for you to engage with if you want to and have fun. And, I think that's what, if I was going to advertise Guild Wars 2, if I was going to make the video that eventually, or I've been running from it, guys, right? Okay. Every Guild Wars 2 creator makes the, should you play Guild Wars 2 video? Okay. I'm on my way, right? I'm nearly there, right? Like I've nearly landed. I've nearly made it as a Guild Wars 2 YouTuber, right? And the way I would sell it is like, yeah, like, the game just doesn't screw you over. Like, the game is fun. Like, the reason, if you're looking at something in Guild Wars 2, it's there to play, right? It's there to engage with, right? It's not there to say, oh yeah, you can't do this until you have that item, right? You need to do like that raid first, or do all that stuff first, or grind this first, grind that currency, grind that reputation. No, it's just play, go play. Like, I mean, imagine Guild Wars 2, you could literally raid day one. And in fact, I have had people do this, right? There's a guy called Bok. Well, he's kind of famous on my stream, and he was level 80 warrior. I'm sure he's seen something like this Muck as well. This is going to be a good tale. And he made his way to the aerodrome day one. He's like 100 AP, right? He's in full soldier's gear, and he's like, you know what? He joined my Veil Guardian training run. Okay. And obviously he had 2k toughness, so no one could tank. I made him strip naked. Okay. And he killed Veil Guardian
for future use.
Right? He killed Veil Guardian completely naked on day one of his play. I mean, wow. Like, what a game. I mean, like, game of the year. Game of the year right there. Okay. Yeah. Incredible.
No, I think I agree in the sense of like, it doesn't have to have a huge, but MMOs in general will use something to kind of build, not say build the expansion around, but like kind of something to just like say, oh, by the way, this is a big feature that's coming in this expansion, right? It's not like something that isn't, is going to make you play the expansion, but every MMO does it because it's just something to kind of say, oh, this is a big feature that's coming in this expansion. In general, I mean, again, End of Dragons, mostly the selling point is really Kanta, right? I think in a sense that it just people are very excited that we're finally kind of leaving Tyria and going into a different map entirely. That in its own is going to be an entire plot point of its own, right? Story mode is basically what this game thrives on. I think, you know, Guild Wars 2 lore for me as a Guild Wars 1 player and a lot of other people who probably agree, whether or not Guild Wars 1 or if you just played in Guild Wars 2, story of this game is very well executed, right? They basically make it like as if you're watching an episode of a long-running series, right? And I think that's a very interesting way of having a storyline progress. But yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know. Someone was saying like maybe game-changing feature could be player housing, or I honestly don't think so. I think maybe just I guess it would be cool, and yeah, there is the money aspect, right? Gem shop stuff, but I would honestly be content with more stuff to the guild hall. I feel like guild halls are things that they could maybe kind of just give a bit more focus to. I think the collective of a community coming together to build something together is more interesting to me than one player showing off his home and personal house in a game to one or two friends. I think building something together is just more of an interesting topic for me, at least.
Well, isn't a new feature elite specs? Like they would.
Yeah, I mean, elite specs because I would say because we've had that in HOT and Path of Fire, so it's kind of expected to get elite specs, right? If we don't get elite specs in End of Dragons, people will.
I think he was asking, what are we going to get that will fill the slot for gliders and mounts? I think it was kind of expected that we get elite specs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like the thing that is going to fit the new slot. I mean, it's going to be something like player housing, right? Like or something like that. But I think that, you know, like in terms of like in terms of like features that the expert's going to be shipping with, we're going to be shipping with a lot of stuff, right? There's going to be a lot of new content that's going to come out there as well. You're going to have 9 new ways to experience, you know, the game, like 9 new elite specializations. I think you got a lot going on there.
You also got
right?
alliances.
You know,
if alliances is an actual thing in the expansion, then oh boy, dub revival, let's go.
Probably going to come through as well. Like, well, maybe a little bit, maybe kind of. I mean, who knows? With regards to that, I mean, I imagine we're going to see like some kind of instance content as well. Like, so they're probably going to say, oh yeah, we're going to focus on strikes in the expansion, which I think is actually plausible that they would do that, because they said they aren't done with them yet. That very strongly implies there are going to be strike missions in the expansion, in my opinion. Maybe even they would try raids again. I really hope they do, but we don't. I think if they are going to try a raid, I would expect to hear about it on the 27th, I think, right? Like, you know, a little bit of a tease, maybe. I mean, actually, wait, no, it's Aina. No, I wouldn't actually. No, I take it back. But no, but yeah, like, certainly, like, they'll
short-lived dream.
They definitely talk about like some kind of content. They're going to talk about the type of content they're going to release, I think. And yeah, there will be a feature, right? It's just. I am inclined to agree with you, MM. I think it's very difficult. I think they've got a lot in the game. Like the Guild Wars 2 is like very packed. This is an old game. This is a very old game, and they have consistently layered on system after system onto this game over a long time. And there's not really that much else they can do. But I mean, they just might as well call it a day and just add fishing to the game at this point.
Oh boy, imagine! I'll make money on fishing alone, easy peasy. I think
I'm just imagining a fishing pole that breaks every 25 uses.
Unlimited fishing tool. Ooh, here we go.
Rare Black Lion chest drop sells for 8,000 gold.
You can hear it already. Like the money's actually gonna happen with that. You know, like imagine fishing.
Maybe if they use nets, it'll make a little bit more sense if you replace nets.
Oh well. Yeah, I think overall, I mean, the fact that this isn't an expansion that's coming out in Tyria. This is an expansion that's taking us abroad to another, you know, continent, right? It's that alone, like, is probably going to be in itself, I guess you could say, the game changer, right? The fact that we've tied off these threads, like we talked about, these storylines that just kind of got tied up, and you know, again, disappointing or not, but we're heading into a direction that's very different, very unexpected. We have really no idea what this expansion can throw at us in a way, because it's entirely new area, right? They give us 5 or 10 new maps to explore, but we've never been in any place that's similar to these maps, and that alone is going to probably fulfill a lot of I guess veteran gameplay, people who have been just playing since day one and just want something new. There you have it. That expansion is basically in itself a huge 180. It's like as if you wouldn't have, like, you could tell someone, if you could play End of Dragons, you probably It'd be a different game if you just played Guild Wars 2 from scratch, right? That's basically what we're getting.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one, and this is slightly segue from what you just said, but it's kind of like building off that last thing. One thing that I think they should absolutely do, which is definitely one of the, in my opinion, like major flaws with Guild Wars 2 right now, is that if you're playing an MMO, it is not a TV series. If you're oh man, you should watch Game of Thrones. You're not going to watch, and you've never seen it before. You're not going to start with season 8, right? You're going to start with season 1 and work your way through and build up to some disappointment. But like when it comes to this sort of thing, if you don't play Guild Wars 1, Guild Wars 2 through from the start, like who is Braham, right? Who is this person? Right? Like, who is Rox? Like, who are all these like characters? Like, why am I the commander? Right? Like, what's going on here? Right? And this is something I would love to see. Now, again, they might be a bit pushed for resources, but I would absolutely love it if they had like a full leveling experience in Cantha, like a new, Timey dead, right? Okay, she's just dead. Braham, he's like, oh, I am too weak, right? I can't continue. Go on without me.
If I
Commander.
still cared about the story,
okay.
I'd be offended right now.
Okay, and then you've got all these other characters. They're just write them out, like just write them out. Let's start again with Cantha, so people join in the game, know what the hell is going on, right? And so it's much easier for them to kind of connect with the story and with the world instead of having to play through 2 expansions and like 3 seasons worth of living story to know what on earth is actually going on and who all these like different characters are.
I do think, and Gildemim touched on this much earlier, this is just coming from my experience with when WoW released Wrath of the Lich King. They released a new class, which was the Death Knight. And the Death Knight it didn't make any sense in the story for them to be in the newbie zones. So the Death Knight started at level 50, but you could only make one if you had already leveled a character to 50 in the past, and then that option unlocked. And I honestly don't think ArenaNet is going to make a new class or a new race, but they totally could if they follow something like that. Like, for example, you can make one of the Tengu that everybody is going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for, but it starts at level 70 in a 70 to 80 zone in Cantha, but you have to have had a level 70 in the past. Something like that would not be very difficult, and then just make it so that character can't play the core story. And you wouldn't have to go back and voice act the old lines with a Tengu voice actor or anything like that.
No, I think if they introduce a new race, it should start at the expansion. It should never be, because they basically have not been part of the story anyway, right? So why should they have basically to rework everything? So yeah, and I agree with that. Like, if it starts from only that moment and onwards, not before.
Which is what they did in Guild Wars 1. You could make a new character and factions in the faction storyline.
The thing is with Guild Wars 1, the expansions, or as they call them, campaigns back in the day, is they were all kind of standalone, and then you just kind of had the main characters from each campaign either appear or not appear sometimes. Like, there were some NPCs from Guild Wars 1 who appeared in the next expansion, which was factions. But if you played only factions, you would not have missed anything. You wouldn't have been like, oh, who is this NPC? Because they kind of just introduced them in a way where it's like, oh, this is a friend from a long time kind of thing. And so then
it's just like you just didn't know what Menlo did in his college days, but it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of just made it easier for you to just digest the story. And same with Nightfall. And I guess Eye of the North as well. Eye of the North as a standalone expansion, if you just played that alone as well, it's fine, because it actually has an entirely new set of characters that you deal with. So
okay.
Yeah, I see you answering chat, huh?
Well, I'm answering chat. Don't worry, I am listening, and I don't disagree with any of that stuff. I mean, like, when it comes to new race, don't do it. It's not a good idea. We don't want it in Guild Wars 2, and why is that? Because if there's one thing that ArenaNet has difficulty with, it is making armor skins, right? They are quite famous as going on record saying that it takes them like 9 months to make one set of armor, which is why we have outfits now as opposed to proper sets. there as well a lot of the time, and they do still release like the odd full set and some full like pieces that can actually be mixed and matched, but a lot of the time you don't really get like complete things in that way. You want to add a new race to all of that, you want to have to remodel everything so it works on like the Tengu with like feathers and these birds about the place. The amount of work it would take to do that, listen guys, okay, we're talking about like we're talking about the company, right, that that took it was supposed to deliver legendary weapons with HOT. You know that Exordium, guys? That was supposed to release with HOT, by the way. Okay, and it released basically towards the end of season 4, right, of Living Story, right? Like, do you really want them to do a whole new race? No, you don't, right? I mean, I think a new race would be cool, by the way, and I actually think it would be a great hook for players to return to the game and new players to return to the game. But
we're not counting on it.
No, because if they did that, you'd get to the expansion and it will be an empty island with one mob on it, right? Like that will be all they'll have done, like outside of the new race. They won't have had any time to develop anything else. It would be a complete disaster. I think
that's also kind of why, like, if they did develop the race, like it has to start at level a very close map, like either level cap or at like close to level cap, because it would be a waste to have 3-4 maps dedicated to a race and then the other 5 maps that are only dedicated to level 80 zones. You miss out on providing more content that you can do for the existing races and the existing storyline, rather than cut it through with just a race that takes up half of the expansion's development. So,
well, it's just that I don't think that okay. I mean, I'm speaking this from a semi self-centered point of view. Like I like Guild Wars 2 quite a lot. Okay, for those who don't know, and I think it's a very good. And what I care about is gameplay. And in my opinion, what's really going to get people stuck in this game is that the gameplay's fun and they enjoy playing the game itself. And a new race is cool. Don't get me wrong, right? I think, being able to play a different type of character and have a different story and new characters that you can interact with and all that kind of stuff, right? That's fun. Like, I like story. I mean, I enjoy the story in Guild Wars 2. I enjoy the world as much as the next man. But I think that in terms of like development priorities, particularly if it's going to be very, very costly, and it has historically had a lot of difficulty with developing stuff like this, which they have, like across the board, like they have had trouble developing stuff like skins and like making it work with all these different characters, right? Because you've got to make every item work for every race, right? Or at least vaguely, right, in the case of certain races. But I don't think it's really worth it, right? Like yeah, you'll kind of like hook some new players in, but I would imagine that something might end up suffering for that. It's going to be a lot of development time that would go into that. It'd be difficult to actually pull off. You might end up with like less skins, for the end game rules. You might have like less, less new customization options there, or maybe like the cosmetics for the new player housing would suffer because of that. Like maybe they don't have time to fix the guild hall because of that, for example, right? Like I would much rather they actually address issues within the game and build new content and new kind of like side grades or like upgrades to certain features within the game than worry about like being able to play as like a a talking chicken.
Yeah, I think kind of the same. If they can do it, okay, that's great. But if they do it, but it also cuts on development of other features, then I'd rather just the other features are perfected, right? So kind of that situation.
I mean, it will be, yeah. I mean, that would be nice.
Yeah. So we are almost kind of out of time with Mukluk here. So
he's ditching. He hates us.
Yeah, you have any closing notes?
Oh man, you don't say, "Oh, we're almost out of our allotted time." You just pick me and just throw me under the bus.
No, yeah. I mean, you
the
have
school bus
reasons.
Bringing my son home is just gonna bump right over me.
He's got valid reasons.
Driving.
I won't, keep you from being a parent, because that is entirely
No, let's keep going. I'm just gonna leave. The door's locked. He'll be outside. We've got a porch. He'll be out of the rain. Let's just keep going. It's fine.
I'm playing chicken. Right now. Who's going to go the longest? Who's going to quit first, Muck? Okay, is it going to be you or is it going to be me? Who's going to leave the call first? It's like one of those Mr. Beast challenges.
Someone DDoS this Teapot.
Oh boy. Anyway, well, Muck, if we do want to closing comments, it's up to you, Teapot, if you actually want to continue, or we can end it right here. So either way, up to you guys. But Muck, I feel like you could have some closing moments before you have to go help your kid. Otherwise, he's locked outside, and not a very good thing. So yeah, anything you want to add to the...
Yeah, Father of the Year.
Yeah. Anything you want to add?
Okay, so closing comments, broad generalizations. The Icebrood saga, the beginning, the beginning was cool. You know, I think they overhyped it with the announcement. At the end, it really seems like unless they say something otherwise, it really seems like they had more planned. It reminded me so much of like when you're reading a comic or a manga. For those of you already in Cantha, if you're reading something like that, and then suddenly the editor tells the writer, and he's like, "Hey, I know you had 100 more issues planned, but we're cutting you off, so wrap it up in the next 2." It felt like that. I've seen that so many times. So it definitely felt like it was rushed. It kind of stinks, but I really hope that that's just behind us now. I'm very much looking forward to the Cantha stuff. But for me personally, the new Elite specs, I can't wait to do some like theory crafting and messing around with new builds and stuff like that. New lands to run around in, that's great, but I really don't care if there's dirt or sand under my feet. I just want to hit people in new, unique ways. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the balance patch, and looking forward to the legendary armory. As someone who is finally in full legendaries, I actually beat Teapot. I'm shocked by that. When I saw you tweeting, they're like, "Oh my god, Aurora was so tough." I'm like, "How did I beat this man on Aurora?" So
I was scared of it. Like I didn't even.
To be fair, Chalice of Tears is very scary.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like the thing is, like the reason I didn't do Aurora is because I just didn't want to. I had no reason to, right? Because before Legendary Armory, Legendary gear was just like very annoying, very expensive Ascended gear, basically. And I had so much of that I had zero motivation to do it. Like I was like, no, okay, I will not go around and collect your 40 Mersat tokens. I will not do it. It is not happening. But, you know, I've done them all now. I'm just basically waiting on, you know, I'm nearly finished up all of my legendary sets, like all the heavy stuff, the sigils, all that stuff. I'm just, you know, basically need to farm a bit more gold. Then I am good to go on that there as well. I mean, actually, like, things we are going to wrap this up here. You know, there's something that I was trying to like get this like mild troll question in the entire time. I'm just going to shoehorn it in now. Actually, now I lurk around in a lot of streams. And I've watched the journey of Mukluk with great interest, okay? Because, you know, like just like 6 months ago, he was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, having fun in the game. Like none of the problems that like all the veteran players like knew about like were apparent to him.
And now I'm a jaded cop trying to get his attention.
And now he's one of us, guys, okay?
Yeah.
Now, I honestly, there was this moment, okay? And it's weird because you actually, it was after our first podcast and you were in Mistlock Sanctuary, right? And I was weird because I was like listening. I was like just doing my thing. And then I hear you mention my name. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Is he about to talk some shit? Right? But obviously, no, he wasn't because he's a very nice man. But... and he basically was like, oh yeah, like it was after a concert. It was actually it was about Whisper of Jormag actually, because you just done Whisper of Jormag and it completely broken as usual. And you know, you were talking about how like you reported it and nothing happened, right? And you kept reporting it and nothing happened, right? And there was this like big moment. I was like, oh yes, he knows. He's become enlightened to Guild Wars 2. He knows.
You were
like,
drinking my salty tears.
Yeah. And I'm just curious. I would love to know from your perspective, actually. What do you think are the biggest issues in the game, and what do you and your audience like kind of butt heads with in Guild Wars 2 on a regular basis? Because obviously you have a lot of new players in your audience, and you know, I suppose in a way, like you yourself are to an extent a new veteran, right? You're a new veteran player, kind of breaking onto the scene there, being a little bit more of a hardcore casual these days, like the rest of us. Like,
okay.
what's your take on that?
Like you, I brainwash my audience, so I don't butt heads with them at all. We agree on everything. But what I have convinced them all to believe is, like, Guild Wars 2 is a great game, but I no longer have the illusion that I have any control over it. I feel like I'm just along for the ride, and I'm riding it, and I'm enjoying it, and I am making content for it, and it's great. But like, you know, I no more will I do videos or like, you know, top things I would love to get fixed. And then, hey, Ben P, will you watch my video? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then it's like, you know, it's like the Facebook just says message seen last year, you know, and that's the last thing I see from him. And I'm like, oh man, all right. You know, it's like, there's no more drive to do content like that. So now it's just like, okay, this is how it is. This is broke. I've hit the report button once. It's been in their inbox for 11 months. I'm just going to warn people. I'm just going to move on. But as far as like the biggest faults, I think it's just their tendency to put something down and then run to the next thing. Dungeons, fractals, raids. It's been over a year since the last wing. They did strikes, and they grew on me. I really started enjoying strikes, despite the fact that Whisper Jormag is bugged 10 ways till Tuesday. And then they were like, Dragon response missions. And I'm like, dang it, I loved strikes. Like, when I heard DRMs, I immediately went, dang it, I loved strikes, because I thought that was the nail in the last thing's coffin. So, yeah, it's just, instead of, like, continuing to hone something that they made that works, they very much are like, ooh, piece of candy. And then they just run over to the next thing. So that would be what I think is the biggest
They
weakness.
want to
I know, Outlook, stop beeping at me.
No, they want to cook a filet mignon, but they want to skip the steps to make a perfect filet mignon. That's what it kind of sometimes feels like.
No, it's like they were cooking a filet mignon and it was coming out perfectly, and then the guy screamed into the kitchen, "Are my chicken nuggets ready?" And they were like, "What?" And then they just like knocked the filet, I can't even say millet mignon, onto the floor, and then they started microwaving nuggies. And halfway through that, then some guy screamed for a burger, and it keeps happening.
Yeah, that's honestly a great analogy. It's
even better,
they just never finish cooking it. It's like they'll say, oh, they'll say, hey, take a taste of this, right? And it's like it's obviously undercooked because they've only been cooking it for like 1 minute, and like, oh, yep, that's terrible. Throw it away, right? Break out the tendies, boys. Okay, it's tendy time. And yeah, that's exactly what the arena has a tendency of doing. I would completely agree with that. Like, I think it's no surprise to me that you have reached that conclusion. The wrinkly brain is here, but I think that will be my troll question there for the end of the stream. I suppose. Oh well, actually, I'm okay to go if you want to go more, Emin. By the way, like, I can talk about Guild Steve forever.
Yeah,
I can do this all day.
I know you can. I watch your streams. I know you can.
On these men. This is a great time to tell you guys this stream is brought to you by Blue Chew. For Blue Chew, please go to Guild MM.
Blue Chew. This stream is sponsored by my crown, please, and my sunglasses. They're beautiful.
Is that what they call it in Dubai?
They call it, well, no, my stream calls it Burger King crown. So, like, I've been trolled with this now at this point. So, but
all right, I really do got to step out. I got to go into dad mode. Y'all been wonderful. Yep. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, Mukluk. Thank you. All right, he's going to leave now, and the whole video is going to get messed up. So, one second.
True. That is going to happen. That's very likely to happen.
Yeah. So,
I'm just going to kick everything over on my way out.
Yeah, just get out of here.
What the hell? The video's messed up
now.
Oh, boy. Yikes. Mate, this is a mess.
It is.
All right, give me a sec to switch this over. I gotta pull you down here. Actually, I'll make a new window capture, to be honest, because I'm not gonna...
Incredible stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, there's things in the expansion that I'm hopeful for, and yeah, a lot of this honestly has to do with the fact that, yeah, they don't have to really, like you said, focus on too much of the features that will grind people's into the expansion, right? Because it's more or less like the expansion itself is a treat. That we're getting a whole new location and a whole set of things. Does that work? I feel like you froze.
Oh no, I'm still here. I'm just not moving.
You're so incredibly still. I was just like, wait, is he broken? Okay.
Yeah, I'm poised. I'm like a mantis, Guild MM. Ready to pounce.
Is that so? All right, there we go. All right, I gotta figure out these filters that I had on you here. Copy filters. And then where's your window capture here?
Very nice.
There we go.
But, right. Okay, you know what? I'm mixing this up here a little bit. We've talked about all this stuff. Right. Chat. I want to say MM or chat. If you guys have anything you want to ask us, ask me or ask MM. Ask both of us. Ask none of us. I don't know. Just say something random in the chat. Let's go.
Yeah.
Put Plenger in the chat. Like, give me a few Plengers. You know, let's get a few little Plengers about the place, you know? Get them in there.
Which version is the evil version? I don't know. Hey, if you had like your good side versus your bad side, who would win? That's a good question.
Let's honestly a very, very good question. Good side versus bad side. Probably good side because my bad side would start feeling guilty and then join the good side.
Oh, okay. Ah, that's actually pretty nice. The fact that you're a bad
Yeah.
side feels for
You
your
know,
good side. That means your
can we
bad
cut
side
that?
is in some sense a good side.
We got to cut that out, guys, because look, my internet persona is entirely based off me being like a really tough, edgy guy. I can't let anyone know that I'm actually a bit of a big softy. That's unacceptable to me.
Yeah.
Have to cut that one out. Get that out of here, right?
Is now the time to buy alt accounts? I would say wait for sales. You'll expect a lot of sales happening soon. That is really the time. Whenever you see $15 Path of Fire and HOT, buy like 5
You
accounts.
missed it.
Yeah.
You missed it. Should have bought it, guys. There was a sale May 1st to May 5th. It was actually very funny. Mella, he was saying, "Oh yeah, bro, this sale starts today. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm gonna buy some alts. I'm gonna get some alts going there. Fund my, fund the guild bank. Fund my account." And yeah, he actually he misread it, right? He thought it started on the 5th. It actually started on the 1st and ended on the 5th. There, that was quite funny actually. But yeah, all accounts definitely worth buying because they are literally infinite gold. If you know you're going to be playing the game for like a year, I'd highly recommend getting a few. Particularly if they're on sale, they pay off very, very quickly. Ritualist coming. Ritualist won't. You might see some Ritualist inspired stuff in some of the specs. In fact, I'd be very surprised if you don't. Maybe on Rev or something.
I would say there'll be.
Okay.
I mean, it would be probably more like bits of traits or maybe like a skill or two, but I wouldn't expect a full ritualist specialization. It would probably have to be in some form of a mix of something. Yeah, I just don't see a full spec. Who would win in a beetle race, Teapot or MM? I just pay him to lose.
True. I mean, there you go. that I would take that deal. I will throw for money. Easy peasy.
All right. So actually, as a topic I really want to discuss on the podcast. We've kind of had an ANET roadmap, right? And then now we kind of you can see the community, us, have kind of come up with our own, in a sense, roadmap, right? Like you have, for example, gamers giving back, doing charity streams. You have United Arts of Tyria, the alliance I represent. Like we're doing fashion shows, beetle race, jumping puzzles, and a lot of other competitions every month. And then you have Hardstuck community that's also doing a lot of that stuff as well, like competitions, something to fulfill someone's needs every single month. And the fact that I'm partnering up with you to come up with the biggest GVG tournament in June. By the way, !Boy GVG tweet, make sure you tweet that, retweet, like it, get ANET on board with us, and !Boy GVG for the actual Reddit link, guys. All right, we're gonna try and make the biggest GVG tournament of all time. And then you also have Hardstuck. You also have a raid league sometime in July, or I think in August. You said you might delay it maybe a month, but it's pretty much on the levels of ERP3, right? Like big production value levels, right?
Yeah, sure. So I think that right. Okay, we're officially on the after show, guys, the post show. So I can give you guys the top secret information. Right. Like the expansion is not going to be this silver bullet, this magic bullet that is going to completely save the game. Right? It's just not going to happen. Guild Wars 2 is a game with so many fundamental issues that are unfixable. Like, for all intents and purposes, unless you are literally the reincarnation of Jesus, right, you aren't fixing this stuff. And as a result of that, we're going to have to learn and find ways to deal with the problems in the game. And I think the best way to do that is community events. And that is why this stuff is so important. Because if we don't, I think people are essentially just going to eventually burn out. Like the magic, look, none of us here anymore, or not many of us anyway, are in the honeymoon phase. I mean, look, dude, like, not even Muck's in the honeymoon phase anymore. Like, he's long gone, man. Like, he's on like the fucking,
you remember like our discussion, State of the Game last year, right? Like you and I and Red, who was actually one of the TP members with me, like we all had like the same kind of veteran opinion, and then Muck was kind of more optimistic about a lot of the points. And it's very nice to see that it's almost been a year since that podcast too, so it's like it's a huge 180 on how he feels now, because he's had enough time to really have a veteran kind of opinion on the game, because he's now been that long. Like he's transitioned to becoming very much a veteran. So there's, I guess, bits and pieces of Guild Wars 2 that we love and hate, and there's a lot of things that you wish more of the community or the game could improve on. It's just not realistic sometimes, right? You have to deal with what the game gives you.
Yes.
Yeah.
The content releases are going to be not super fast, probably. There will be balance issues within the game. There will be bugs within the game. Like, a lot of the content will still be open world and story driven, and like, there will be issues there. Like, I hope they fix the replayability. I think with Icebrood Saga, they're definitely moving in that direction, which is something that Retribution Zero asked an amazing question. I really want to answer it actually at some point, so keep pinging us so I don't forget to respond to it, because it's honestly one of the most important questions that you could possibly ask.
Oh, what did you ask?
Yeah, well, you all keep it as a surprise. But yeah, no, I mean, look, okay, do you know what my biggest gripe with the Guild Wars 2 community is? And this is something that we still do very, very badly now, right? And we need to be way better. Like, we are not really united in any meaningful way. In my opinion, what we need to do with Guild Wars 2 and content creation and the community, we all need to actually make a community. Like, right now we have lots of little communities, like, multi-100 member discords, like multi-100 member guilds, but they aren't all really like one cohesive entity. Like, if you really want to elicit change and try and change the narrative of the game and actually really help players, then you need to have way more muscle. And that's kind of like what I was trying to set up with Hardsuck, right? I really want to get everyone under the same banner in some way, and everyone working together, everyone promoting each other. Obviously, I'm more than happy to help out with stuff outside of the organization as well. But like, the end goal is to have like a one-stop shop for everything, where everyone communicates, everyone helps each other out, everyone's pooled resources, right? And you just have this massive community. I was really inspired by Final Fantasy, actually. I was chatting with some of my viewers about it, and Xandri as well, about Final Fantasy, and they have a Discord, which is like the central hub for Final Fantasy, that has like 260,000 members.
But isn't that like the Guild Wars 2 Reddit Discord that we have? It's kind of that, right? It's not obviously to that level, but that's maybe you can attribute that to the level of the game too.
Wait, are you? I mean, there are around 20k members in the Reddit Discord. Are you saying Final Fantasy is like 10 times bigger than Guild Wars 2?
No, I'm not saying that, but like you're saying that there's a Discord that's kind of central, right? Like, isn't that the same thing that Guild Wars 2 Reddit Discord is supposed to be? Like,
yeah, but nothing goes on there, right? Like, there's not much going on. It's not the same. It's not to the same extent.
Oh, so
and then look at a game like Classic WoW. Like, in Classic WoW, which is a 15-year-old game played by 30-year-old boomers who are remembering their college days, right? And me, I guess. But like, they have class discords there. So this is like for tryhards, basically, people who want to get good at the game. Just the Warrior Discord has 70,000 members in it. Just Warrior. That's one class in that game. Yeah, it's bigger than anything else. Dude, look, okay, here's a meme for you. Like, giveaways are great for building a Discord, but even Cellarfrag's Discord, which is probably the biggest Discord in the Guild Wars 2 community, actually, because
people.
Yeah, even that gets flattened by one class in a 15-year-old dead boomer Monster Energy game. That is insane.
But the thing is, you have to also compare like population levels, right? Like, how much does Guild Wars 2 have active player base? 200, 300,000 actively playing? And then you have WoW that has, even if WoW is not like in its glory days of like 10 million active, but WoW still has like, 2 million players maybe or something playing. And Final Fantasy is probably close to 1 million, I guess. You could say that they're maybe 500-600k, maybe a little over Guild Wars 2, but not that much. Would you think, okay, here's a very interesting question I have. Do you think, right, that there is a negative to the point that Guild Wars 2 communities try to do their own thing versus, of course that is a negative in its own, but do you think it's a negative that there's too many individual communities, or do you think those communities are not maybe interacting with each other enough, like collaborating at least in some level?
It's not a negative. It just means that you're weaker. I mean, like, that's the ultimate thing there. Like, it's fine the way it is right now. It's not like bad. Like, I'm perfectly happy to collaborate with other people. I think it works really well as long as we communicate with each other. I just think it can be way better if we all work together, like in a more cohesive manner, right? That's the thing. And like, yeah, you can do this, but the thing is, you're going to be having a lot of little minor effects, right? As opposed to having lots of major effects. If everyone coordinates and everyone pushes in the same direction, it's way better. Like right now, and for not right now, but like for the history of the game, everyone's been pushing in their own direction, and like without any kind of like central thrust. This means that it's very actually hard to elicit any kind of change regarding the narrative of the game or the community of the game. It works, it's fine, but I don't think it's optimal. I think it's suboptimal the way we go about some of this stuff here.
Now, here's the thing. you've seen, I mean, in a sense, here's why it feels like that, maybe, because I think while you know, you have good points, each community carries the game in its own way, because they're very kind of secluded from each. For example, Heartstock, right? A huge community of gamers, all with a passion. You've linked a lot of streamers in the community, but Heartstock is still in its own side of the game. Then you go to, for example, the Guild Wars 2 Reddit Discord. That's in its own side of the game. You go to the Overflow Trading Discord. That's also, you know, very doing its own thing, right? Each community kind of does its own thing, and maybe the collaborations could be done better, but I feel like a lot of people try to do things and they want to do it themselves rather than share, I guess, the participation with. I don't know if that's a problem, but like,
correct.
If
Yes,
it is a problem, then, for example, right, I have this GVG
Yes.
tournament that I'm working on, right? I could have probably just done this by myself, and I could have probably just tried as much as I can to get other people in my own circle involved as much as I wanted to, right? But it serves no benefit, and when I already have people I know who can help me organize this the way I need it to be, right? To the level, the standard that I want it to be. And this is why, for example, I approached Roy, right? Because Roy knows I had the passion to do this tournament, and he has the same passion. What does Roy bring to the table? He brings Heartstock to the table. When you have two basically communities that merge like that, this is probably going to be a tribute to the success of the tournament, right? And the same with Masters of the Arena. Masters of the Arena had a huge amount of commitment from Heartstock, or Illusion Elitist at the time. But when I came in and you told me, like, can you introduce the Barons to this type of contest and let's get some big prize pools going? I mean, we saw what we were able to do there, right? Like, so I think there's bits and pieces that work, but it's not happening maybe enough, right? It's not enough of it.
Well, but yeah, you just basically said what I mean, you completely agree with me, right? Yeah, you're right. It turns out that when everyone works together, like in the same direction, it's really good, right? Yeah, like I completely agree. Yeah, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can do that like without a close level of integration, but I think with the closer level of integration comes a greater level of effectiveness as well. Like this is fine, but you know, like to a certain extent, like we are kind of fumbling around in the dark. I think we should like the end goal should always be to be as cohesive as possible, particularly when the community is as small and as fragmented as it is. Like yeah, if you've got like a giant like mega community, that's fair enough. Then you don't really necessarily need to like work with other ones. And by the way, you're absolutely right that Heartstock is its separate thing. We don't want to be like we are. You know, I will be actively sharing my resources with everyone who wants them. Basically, I'll be sharing anything. For example, like Rom is not as such a part of a Heartstock, but I'm just gonna, you know, we're gonna power his tournament as well and like get stuff organized there for him as well. Like yeah, like that's not the way we want to go about this. Like we want to go ahead and say, oh yeah, like we'll help anyway. If anyone is welcome, like you know, like we want to get involved with what you're doing. Let's talk about it, right? Like let's join in, right? Yeah, like we actively try and prevent this from happening. Like
I mean,
you know, if you want to get stuff on, we want to enable it.
This GVG thing is kind of in that similar sense, right? Like I'm trying to work on something, and you guys are gonna help me by supporting the tournament in the capacity that allows me to deliver it to the way that I mean, both of us have a commitment to trying to make sure something is done very well, right? And the same with, I think you even supported, what's his name? The person that did the, I think it was like a streamers PvP tournament. I caught a bit of it. Last week you were commentating with someone, you were casting a, yeah, like, so it's a lot of these bits and pieces that work together. But maybe,
yeah. And we need that all the time. That needs to be every single event. Like every creator needs to be on board with this because we are so much greater than than the sum of our parts, right? When we work together in this way, like that is how you can actually have a really big effect on the community with everyone pushing together. It's not like Lord Hardstuck, Lord Teapot, we bow down before you. No, that's not the point. The point is, it's like we are all in it together. Like this is our game, and we're gonna push it. We're gonna help Guild Wars 2, and we're pushing in the same direction in a coordinated fashion, and everyone's on board and everyone's invited. Like that's the idea. It's not like, oh, you know, you're gonna have to get like a Hardstuck tattoo on your face. No, quite the opposite. I'm not into that stuff. I don't like wrapping guilds or stuff like that. No, like do as much or as little as you want, but do it in the same direction and do it together, right? I don't want to take over anything, right? Like, I don't want to like be telling people what to do. Quite the opposite. One of my least favorite things actually is telling people what to do. I want to provide people with resources. I want to provide people with a platform, which is going to be the Hardstuck website, the Hardstuck Discord, obviously my stream, like all of our social media, and I want everyone to be able to just take those resources, and I should trust them, and they will do their own thing. I do not want to spend my time yelling at people to do stuff. It is one of the most frustrating things I've ever had. In fact, the entire point of Hard Start, guys, is for this purpose. I want to enable streamers. I want to enable creators and community figures to make a difference. I want that really passionate raider, right, who loves raids, been raiding since day one, who wants to share his knowledge. I want to provide a platform to that player. I want to give, the PvP player, like maybe there's a PvP player. She's been grinding out. She's legend rank, like plays in all the daily ATs. And now she wants to give back to the community and maybe run some in-houses, right? And run that. And I can provide the platform, and we can provide gold and prizing for that. So, someone wants to run a world versus world tournament, like a jumping pulse tournament, a fashion contest. Great. You can do that. There are loads of people who I think would actually like the idea of stuff, but they don't know where to start because they don't have the resources and they don't have the platform. And the thing is, like, if you don't have like this big centralized thing, then they never will.
Well,
right? They'll sit there in obscurity forever.
I've seen this happen, right? So you have you've seen multiple PvP tournaments that get hosted on people's streams or communities that host them. You've seen, for example, fashion shows, like, in a sense, wasn't really a new thing, right? But let's say last year, I remember, for example, Shay was doing fashion shows for a while, right? And I think a few other streamers were doing fashion shows every now and then. And then I started getting into that with a community, and then you also started getting that with Hardstuck. So you see a lot of communities that do the same thing, and that's good to see. And it goes back to something that Tommy is suggesting. Rather than have a lot of huge communities who are very huge to do their own kind of thing, and maybe that's what's missing. Maybe a Guild Wars 2 Discord, just like the Final Fantasy Discord, that's just for every community to just centralize into, right? Now, all the other communities could still do their thing, but this one centralized Discord is basically the platform for all people who collaborate together, whether they're on the same team or not, just a place. And maybe that's what's kind of missing, right? Because I think people, when they hear a name of a specific community, like they say Hardstuck or Overflow Discord or Guild Wars 2 Reddit, or, for example, Gamers Giving Back, or there's so many communities, right? People maybe don't want to kind of associate only with the name. They kind of want like just something centralized but general, something that's just very general. Nobody's having a name attached to it. It's just, this is the main thing for every single player in the game. So like maybe a Guild Wars 2 Discord, that's basically that, right? Like one that appeals to every single person, and it's basically the Discord. If you want to collaborate on something, if you want to do raid training, it's the all-in-one Discord, right? So I don't know if that would be better, but
in Final Fantasy, it's called the Balance Discord. In Guild Wars 2, why not call it the Hardstuck Discord? I mean, like, why not? Like, we already have like a pretty big platform. I mean, seriously, like why not? I mean, like, like all this stuff that I'm doing right now, like in a way, I've already done this. Like, I'm taking away credit from myself and giving it to the guild, right? Like this is the nature of collaboration. Yeah, like, you are going to have to like make it less personal. Yeah, for sure. It's no longer
the thing. I think people
longer
feel like it's too personal. Like it's kind of like
the thing is, now it's not going to be a teapot tournament anymore. It's going to be a Hardstuck tournament, right? Like that is what it is. That is how it's going to be.
Yeah. No, but that, I think, again, like it's a good, thing that is like that. Things like that are happening, but I think that's also where it factors, and maybe people just specifically. I don't know why. It's a thing, man. Like, for example, now I start like advertising ever since we got this UAT Discord and United Arts of Tyria Alliance going. For example, I've basically marketed the fashion shows that I do and the jumping puzzles and all the other competitions. I marketed as under that Alliance banner. So it's not really me. It's just hosted on my stream. But same like how you, like the fashion shows or whatever contest, they're not like Teapot, they're Hardstuck. But then there is the stream which is hosting it, right? So... But I think people, in a sense, don't really want something that's like that. Like, it's like, oh, no, this is a community where it's like, it's very specific to these people, right? And then maybe I don't want that. I want a community that appeals to me in every sense. But yeah.
It isn't specific, though. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's why we set up Hardstuck the way we did. It is supposed to be a very neutral platform. Like, and I mean, I don't know, like, do people want that or do they not? I mean, I know, like, without like nickel and diming here, I mean, like, I don't know, like my fashion contest did pretty well, right? Like my tournament did pretty well. I don't think the way we went about it necessarily held it back in that way. So much those. I think they, in general, have been met with a lot of success and a lot of excitement from the community. And it's good to have, like, yeah, sure, like to have it, like, have like this kind of this separation there and have it a little bit more personal, but you can do that at the same time. And I think what is really, really missing is like this idea that like everyone's working together towards a greater good. Like, if you have all these like little different things, well, I mean, look, the fashion contest is a great example of this. Like, we ended up basically running it at the same time, and obviously there was a clash there, and that essentially negatively impacted both. Like, because of the lack of coordination, the lack of unity there, essentially we just screwed each other over, right? Like, both players, both participants got less viewers as a result of that, right?
Yeah, that's true. Like, we actually had very split audience on that. I think one positive about that though is that I started them earlier, so I was able to at least segue into just raiding your tournament after, so that people who finished competing at mine can kind of maybe catch up one of the regions you were doing. But yeah, and I think it's good to have a lot of communities, and I'm sure like there will probably be days where like someone's hosting a PvP tournament and another streamer is doing the exact same thing, or someone's hosting a fashion show and another person's doing the same. It all happens on the same day. Yes, it can be annoying, or if you're planning an event and someone else is planning a different event entirely. The negative is maybe you're fighting for viewership, but I mean the positive is that the fact that there's people ready to be there for the community, ready to set up all these things, right? Ready to kind of promote the game in a different way, right? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe a Guild Wars 2 Discord, like you could just call it the Guild Wars 2 Discord, and maybe that Discord, basically you have to have, again, you're gonna have to have one person that owns the Discord anyway, so it's like people have to be aware of that like Discord has to have an owner, and you can't split that ownership with anyone. And this is what I mean. Yeah. Like, the name is irrelevant, in my opinion. I think this is something that people need to a certain extent get over it, right? I mean, look, I'll just be brutal. Yeah, I think people need to get over this to an extent. Someone is going to be the de facto leader. That is going to be the case no matter what. Like, systems like this require a hierarchy. That is just the way it is. And like, to be clear, I'm actually not the biggest fan of that, and that's why I actually have it as neutral as possible with the way I run the way I run Hardstuck is that it's not one person making all the calls. I will have other people do stuff for me. That's in fact the entire point, that I want it to be this way. I actively want it to be this way. But like, we do want to have this like very, very neutral platform where it is actually detached from any given streamer. Like, Hardstuck is not my guild, guys. That's not how it is. It's a guild that I'm associated with, but it's not my guild. Right, it's actually technically Jester's guild is the one who actually owns the Discord and owns the guild. That's how it is. Yeah. But like that, this is rather the point. But the thing is, if it's not going to be me, then it's going to be someone else. I mean, it's not Jester. If it's not you, then it's someone else. Yeah, but there's no way around this. That's something we did the same with Overflow. Like, Overflow Trading Discord, like, initially was operating under the TP banner. Like, it was operating under my guild's banner, right? And that causes a lot of conflicts of interest, because people were like, you're basically a monopoly and you're monopolizing the market because TP controls all of the decisions in the market, right? At least on the majority of the time, right? And pretty much at one point we had to make the decision. Either we continued running this Overflow and it basically just becomes a way for us to get this whole audience of thinking that this platform is really just serving one guild, or we separate the entity of Overflow, and that operates as independent, and TP now is just a partner guild and it's just a founder of the Overflow at this point. It's nothing to do with the server, right? And a lot of admins got demoted too. Like, we ended up having to demote the original leaders of TP because we were like, if you want to be a part of the Overflow, you have to commit as an admin level, right? You're gonna have to be there for changes. You're gonna have to be pushing the server forward as a trading community, right? So yeah, like, when you have one person leading a community, especially in a game, I mean, in general, that's how companies are run in real life, but in the game, it falls on one person. If that one person is the one that's actively changing everything, if that person is gone, that kills a lot of the activity of the server, right? If that person was basically the one that you were leaning all the job to do at, right? So I think this is why some people confuse things as like, oh, there is a face. This face is, for example, Gilliman is the face of the trading guild, right? So like, he's basically, anything he says is basically what's going to happen in the market, which is entirely wrong. Like, I don't control the market like that, right? I have input on how the market ends up happening, but believe me, it's not me. It's me and 20-30 other big players, right? And there's a lot of controversy and you have clashes. Same with Hardstuck, right? Like, you have yourself, but when you make a decision, I'm sure maybe Mela or Roy maybe tell you, well, can we have it this way? And then you guys have to work out a compromise that you all can agree with, right? That's what it takes to be kind of like a leader. But when you're the face, people usually I think people just have this image that if someone's the face of something, they're basically the de facto leader. I don't know. I think it's
yeah, sure.
one-sided.
I mean, you have to make that not clear. I mean, yeah, there are always going to be like bad perceptions, but you just have to try and clear that up. And also, I mean, people have to kind of get over themselves. That's just not how it works. And you know, anyone who's been in any kind of architecture like this, like, knows that's not how it works, right? You know, it's not one person controlling everything. It's just not really practical at that point, right? It cannot really be the case there, right? It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Mukluk, no face cam. Well, no, Mukluk had to go become...
He's dead. We killed him.
Teapot killed all his optimism of the game, so he is now gone.
Actually, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, other communities do have their own view as well. I agree with that, but I mean, like, I know, let's work together, right? Like, let's work together. Like, you know, you got to look again. It's not like I want to like absorb this stuff. I'm actively saying let's just work together, right? The problem comes in is where people don't actively try and like join. That's the thing, right? Like we've had a few situations with Hardset where people will come in and they'll just plug their own thing the entire time. They'll use it as like a platform to plug. That is not what it's supposed to be. It is supposed to be a linking of communities, not a one-way street where Hardset goes to you. Like, that is actually an inherently toxic relationship that actually happens a lot, right? And it's even happening now. And this is the way a lot of communities operate. Because honestly, look, at the end of the day, I don't really care like how it actually goes down, as long as it actually goes down. I have my goals within the game and I know what I want to do. And look, to be frank, I will get it done no matter what, right? I would love to have everyone on board, but if it doesn't happen, well, you know, that's disappointing, but it doesn't happen, right? I'll just grind it out and eventually be able to accomplish. But the thing is what I really want to change. I really want to change this idea that people have, is that when they're doing something, right, like, they only consider their end of the transaction, right? Like, they don't consider the other end whatsoever. So, you know, like, you know, people will come and like say, hey, you know, I'm going to do this. And then they just spam their own thing entirely and never get involved with the community in any way outside of that exact thing they're doing. That is a great way to make sure that any project you're running dies, right? And it's one of the reasons why it's so hard to get stuff going in Guild Wars 2, because everyone is completely out for themselves and they're not actually interested in the community. They're interested in themselves getting their ego stroked and themselves getting gratified a little bit, right? Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that anyone involved in this conversation is in any way guilty of that, by the way. But there are some people who are, right? There are some people who definitely have been this way. They aren't, you know, I'll actually be more specific. They aren't associated with anything right now. So like that's another thing entirely. But you know, that's some ancient history right there.
I mean, yeah, again, like everyone kind of does their own thing, and that's good. I mean, big communities that here's the thing. I think like the smaller communities could definitely benefit working with other communities, but the smaller communities have to understand, like, if you're being given a platform to get something that you're trying to organize done, right, and that community is significantly larger, you need to kind of give some leeway, right? You can't just be like, no, we're going to do all of this ourselves. Well, then why are you collaborating in the first place, right? What's the whole point of a collaboration at that point, right?
Well, if people don't want to play ball, they don't want to play ball, right?
And you see this happening in a lot of forms of the game. I mean, this is, by the way, not just on the form of a Discord community level. This is on the form of, you go to World vs. World servers, and I'll give you World vs. World servers as experience, right? I basically used to be a funder for World vs. World gameplay back in the day, right? And there was a point where I was just giving to my server, and I wasn't even being told who I'm paying to transfer. I was just basically being told you're paying, and then like a day before the transfer, I get told the information. This is who, by the way, you bought into the server. And it got to the point where, like, listen, if I'm not getting a spot in the leaders table because I'm the one that's carrying the funding for the server, then I'll go somewhere else that will actually make me a leader, right? So that got me into there. And then you get into that leaders circle and you find out that leaders of the same server in World vs. World, right, are fighting and politicking against each other because they all want the fame and credit of, oh, I'm the one that brought this guild over to the server, or, oh, I'm the one that carried the server. And it's like, you're on the same team. What are you trying to accomplish? You're on the same team, right? Isn't the whole purpose of the team is to go forward together? So what does it even matter, right? Like, so...
Well, yeah. And we don't have that, and we aren't going to have that.
Basically, NAW politics, yeah, NAW politics is very sketchy. I can't wait to get back into that. By the way, if we're ever in an alliance game mode, by the way, what's the plan, Teapot, right? Because I want to go for #1 the first season of the tournament. If it ever happens again, I want #1 first season of the tournament. So we gotta think of something like that in the future, you know.
I mean, you can free win because you have all the gold.
Yeah.
I'm not joking.
Well, yeah, but you know, like if we
losing is inconceivable. Like just transfer all the just like pay people to so you can join their alliance.
No. Well,
and join the best alliance.
Should we consider making Heartstuck the #1 tournament winner for the first
season? Of course.
Season?
I mean, yeah, well, obviously, yeah. I mean, look, we have infinite gold too. We're just gonna buy all the good guilds.
Okay. It's gonna be a competition, right? It's gonna be like guilds playing checkers and chess against each other. How about the Guild Wars 2 Discord and below it different communities? Someone actually, Link was doing something interesting. He made a Discord that basically links every single Discord that's relevant to Guild Wars 2. So if you ever needed a WW server, he has all the WW servers listed for NA and EU. He has all the raid communities, all the general communities, all the trade communities.
But the thing is about that's really confusing and it's very fragmented. Why not just cut out the middleman and have it all in one place?
Again, it goes back to the conversation. Like, you're gonna convince, that mentality is great, but you're gonna convince, basically, tell me you're gonna go convince Guild Wars 2 Reddit Discord to basically just feed into Heartstuck, right? It's the same as me. It's the same as me trying to go to them and tell them, feed your players into Overflow Trade Discord, right? To get the community bigger, because we're also organizing things that aren't only just related to trading.
Yeah.
So
why not? I mean, like the Guild Wars 2 Reddit Discord will probably post about my events. That will cause people to join the Discord probably, to get updates on that stuff like that. Like whenever we run raid tournaments and other tournaments, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see why not. Yeah.
But in the sense of like just funnel everything, like, I mean, you go on the Reddit and you've seen how the Reddit usually will downvote stuff, even if it's like something that's good for the community, right? Like,
let's join the Reddit then. Let's start interacting with the Reddit more with our community. And let's change the narrative. Let's change the discourse. Let's get people writing comments and replying to comments and saying, no, I don't agree with that. Let's get people posting stuff. Let's get people upvoting or downvoting based if it's relevant to Guild Wars 2, not if they like or dislike it.
I mean, people have the same views as you, MightyTeapot. That's just facts. Yeah, that's also one of the things, right? Like, I feel like because everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people do have similar opinions of like how to engage a community and how they want to make things a focal point. That's where the egos clash, right? Because like everyone wants to do it, right? And the reality is some people can do it, some people can do it better, but then very few people will end up winning in that argument because it all comes down to that, really, right? So people want that recognition that they were part of this or they were the person that were involved in bringing all of this together. So I think that's basically the downside. Everyone or a lot of people wants to do the same mindset that you and I have, and that's kind of where it would clash. I would go on to argue that if you and I probably had a meeting to try and set up a community collaboration, well, no, GVG tournament aside, that is going all successfully, but in terms of like if you and I sat down and we're like, how do we integrate Overflow and Heartstuck very well together, or any other, maybe United Arts of Tyria, because we're probably doing the same things with that alliance, it would be difficult to do that because you would have to balance give and take. And I'm sure you and I can easily come to a compromise together because I know who you are, you know who I am, right? We've dealt with a lot of things together, but maybe other people might not be so willing, right? It's a hot take, by the way. It's a hot take.
And that's okay. I mean, that's not a hot take. And I don't know why, like, you know, of course people disagree with me, but I agree with me. I think this is the best way to go about it, and I'm going to convince people. Like, just saying that people disagree with me is meaningless. It adds nothing to the conversation. I mean, like, yeah, of course, right? Like, there are loads of people who don't even like me, and that's fair enough. Right? You know, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you don't like what I'm doing, then that's fair too. You know, I don't have anything against that. That's fine. But like, you know, I do think this is the best way to go about things, and I think also I have evidence to back that up. You know, like, again, like not to flex here, but like when it comes to like running events, the things that have gone the best in Guild Wars 2 have been run by me and have been run by my community. Like that is, if you want to talk about facts, that's also a fact, right? You know, I've kind of been dancing around that a little bit, but yeah, like if I'm involved with something, it will work, right? It will succeed, right? And I want to make sure that everything is that way, right? Like, and everything goes that way from the entire community. Yeah, because I guess that's as far as it goes, right? Yeah. You know, I think I do have the correct approach, and I think the results that I've gained over my kind of endeavors within Guild Wars 2 have demonstrated that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I pretty much was amazed with the whole ERP3 promotion, right? Like, that is production level you love to see. I keep telling you about it, but like I will hammer it down. Production level is what people love to see, and that's the big thing about it, right? Even better than in-its tournaments. That's 100% true. I mean, you can't really argue about that. Like Teapot's actually organized a lot of game-changing tournaments in this game. So yeah, and then you have a lot of people who are kind of like, I'm kind of building towards that in my own sense, right? This GVG tournament to me is my first kind of very, you know, complicated, huge project that to me, this is basically my version of trying to see what it will take for me. And I know it's already a lot of hard work because I'm doing the backend stuff now, and I already realized there is a lot of hard work that goes into the tournament, right? Like you have to collaborate with the people who are coming up with the overlays. You have to get the artwork done. You have to get the trailer done. You have to promote. You have to, I mean, prize pool things. Like, I mean, that alone takes a lot of time to build gold towards a tournament and things like that. So I feel like people sometimes underestimate a tournament or anything that's of grand scheme of things is very hard to set up. Yeah, it's very difficult. And believe me, it will take a lot of work. And yeah, I'm finding out, like, I've been doing these fashion shows. I've been doing these other, you know, I've helped host PvP tournaments on Kibas. I've done jumping puzzle, beetle race. I've done a lot of these minor tournaments. This one to me is like the major thing that I'm going to do for the game, and it's quite a task. Do you plan to make GVG after this first one? I definitely do plan to do another one, of course. If this one gets that level of success that I want it to be at, then yes, I would. I mean, even after that, I'll try to push for a better one if this one doesn't go at least to the way that I want it to go to. So yeah, I'll definitely push for that. And I think I'm confident that this one will do well because I'm also having, for example, like Teapot's going to be, by the way, guys, he's going to be casting some of the games to help balance out the streamers, by the way, right? Like we're going to have Teapot help me cast some of these games, right? Like Teapot's going to cast maybe one region, I'm casting the other region. Teapot's at least going to cast one of the regional finals, right? And then I'm going to cast the other regional finals, and the global finals the next week. I'm going to have to like really cast that and try and bring all my energy to it. But like, this is also one of the reasons why Teapot was kind of stressing, I guess, about community involvement together, right? Is when you can bring two people collaborating together, you achieve greater things, right? And this kind of thing, by the way, like the GVG tournament in a way is the first kind of collaboration United Arts of Tyria is kind of doing with Hardstuck. So in this sense, that is basically like our fundamental argument to this whole discussion, right? Is that communities come in and realize where one is strong, the other weakness is filled with the other community, right? So we need a potato filter for people. Mukluk is, oh yeah, he's doing a different type of job right now. He's doing the most difficult job in the world right now. That job is being a dad.
Oh, what about the scum guilds? Well, I mean, just don't support the scum guilds then. I mean, like,
yeah, actually.
That's easy. Don't involve with those. That's very easy. That's a very easy problem to get around. No issue.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, exactly. You need collaboration because, like, otherwise, like, I think we're going to be stuck here forever. You know, like a lot of the stuff that people are going to be going around doing, you're just going to be reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. And you know, like it will just be less effective, right? Like it is going to be a less effective meme. For all the stuff that is rather the whole point. Like, you know, this is my philosophy here is that we should just, you know, like working together is the way to be maximally effective for the game. Like my goal is to be maximally effective for the game. If people's goal isn't to be maximally effective to the game, that's okay, right? You know, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, like not everyone is much of a no lifer as me. That's okay.
I think maybe also, again, yeah, some people just want to play the game in their own aspect. Some people want to make this game better. And some people maybe want to promote the game in a different way. You know, again, this is the beauty of being a content creator. You market the game in your own unique ways, right? So let's just, for example, Mukluk here, right? Mukluk here markets this game for a lot of players who are trying to get into the game, and he provides a lot of useful information on his YouTube channel, different guides that appeal to a variety of players, right? Teapot, you've basically been doing that a long time as well, right? You've been providing content on YouTube for hardcore gamers and casuals as well, and it's been working successfully. And you have a huge push towards, you know, bringing a community together, very much involved in the game and collaborating with a bunch of content creators and different guilds in the game to bring things to the players, right? So in a sense, I'm kind of doing basically that for the community in terms of bringing things for them to enjoy, right? So yeah, it's everyone can do what they want, but you know, some people just don't have the same goals as others. Some, you know, it's fine if you just want to play the game. I mean, again, it's a game to enjoy. You enjoy what you want to do in this game. That's what will be the most important thing. Enjoy what you want to do. And because if you're not enjoying something, then it's not good for you. You're gonna burn yourself out, right? So don't force yourself to kind of be something that you honestly don't really want at the end, right? Enjoy the game for what you want to take out of it.
Yeah, sure. And look, I don't disagree with that. Like all this stuff is good. Like even people doing stuff on their own is fine. Like that's like my only point here is that it will be way better together. For example, like, you know, I'm an idiot, and I'm going to try and do like a big really community month push in June, where I'm going to stream 12 hours a day, 6 hours on EU, then 6 hours on NA, and just try and do loads of community stuff like raid training, getting people into the guild, getting people into the community, like getting people a little bit more engaged in the social aspect of the game. And yeah, like during that, I'm going to be networking and collaborating with as many streamers as possible. Because it's true that, yeah, like everyone's doing great on their own. This is absolutely true. Like I would never dispute that, to be clear. I'm not saying that isn't the case. I'm just saying it would be way better if it was combined. And if I look at my statistics, right? If I look at mine and Souls' numbers, around 50% of the people who watch Souls, okay, watch me, right, at the same time. That number should be 100%, right? And it should be 100% the other way as well, right? 100% of people who watch me, or, well, you know, there's going to be like the 5 guys who think Souls is a complete dickhead because he's one of those Illuminati barons, right? And there's going to be a bunch of people on his stream who don't like me as well, right? But that number should be way higher than that. And if you don't believe me, like go and look at all the top streamers, okay? If you don't believe this statement, like, Tiapot, what a ridiculous thing to say. Everyone should watch everyone. How absurd. No, go and look at all the top streamers right now, guys. Like, look at people like Soda, like all the collaborations they do, like people like Mizkiv, Asmongold, S-Fans, right? Like, or, you know, Ludwig, right? All these actual proper big streamers, they are on each other's stream all the time, and they have formed this massive meta community around all of their streams together. Yes, they operate as individuals, but they also have a massive amount of community cohesion, and they make each other far more popular as a result of that.
That's OTK, right? That's their actual stream team name.
Correct.
Yeah, so like that, and I think that's also one of the visions I see you doing with Hearthstone, right? Is basically it's a community of very passionate content creators or streamers in any sense that are trying to enhance not only their communities but themselves as well, right? There is something for it.
Yes,
for everybody.
But this is what I mean. Yeah, okay, because you pointed this out, right? Everyone's like, "Oh man, I want full credit." Well, you get full credit. Yeah. No one's looking at Asmon and saying Asmongold is the only important person in OTK, right? That would be a ludicrous. I think everyone here would agree that would be an absurd statement to make, right? If anyone said that, it would be ridiculous. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of people involved there doing this stuff, right? Like, yeah, you know, if you are involved in a community project, like you will get credit for it. Like, don't worry, you'll get your tendies, right? You'll get your pat on the back.
Yeah,
100%. And everyone will know that. Like, it will be very, very clear. That's how this stuff works. With collaboration, is that you have to give credit where it's due. It's just that, you know, it's not. Okay. Like the real core issue here is that what I'm asking for or what I'm suggesting isn't crazy. Every other game does this, right? Like Guild Wars 2 is one of the very few that doesn't. I mean, look, there's more collaboration between Yandere Simulator content creators than there is in Guild Wars 2. That's insane. That's ridiculous to me. Like, this is like a game that doesn't even exist. It's like an actual like meme game, and there's more collaboration there in that game than in Guild Wars 2.
I think
like, why is that? Like, we should. I mean, that's a problem. Like, why don't we fix that? Like, you know, I'm saying that's probably a problem, and we're kind of screwing ourselves over. Shouldn't we address that? And by the way, it's more urgent in Guild Wars 2 than in those games, because in those games, they don't need that. Like, the game is big enough and expanding to the point where it doesn't matter that much. But in Guild Wars 2, this is a game that is kind of on a bit of a knife edge, right? Like, they already, they already axed. Like, the Koreans came in with the battle axe and got rid of a third of the company, right? Like, the game is... Like, things are not all blue skies for ArenaNet right now. Like, we are in a bit of a weird position as a player, and of course, you know, with the game studio there as well. Like, a lot of stuff needs to go very well here, in my opinion. Like, things need to go big. It's got to happen.
Like, for example, Shay is saying maybe a full Discord content creator group chat. I mean, that's basically Hardstuck. And here's the thing, right? Hardstuck is the only one of its kind in Guild Wars 2 right now. You have a lot of communities in Guild Wars 2 are very specific to Guild Wars 2, and Heartstock right now is specific to Guild Wars 2, but I imagine like the plans for Heartstock is to be, that's also why you took a name that's not very specific to Guild Wars 2, right? Heartstock is a name that you can apply any other MMO you guys start up in, you will build the community around that. So the problem is in Guild Wars 2, first of all, other MMOs like WoW, they have multiple streaming community groups. Multiple, right? In Guild Wars 2,
because the game is big.
Yeah, the game is big. In Guild Wars 2, name another one other than Heartstock that's a, you know, I guess you could say Iridescent is one, right? Shay is one of the leaders of Iridescent, right? And it's a all-female collaboration of streamers who are, you know, they all have the same passion, right? So that's one. That's maybe two, right? But name me another one, right? There's maybe 2, 3. Maybe you could say 3.
I mean, there was
right?
Jebro's, right? Like Jebro had one as well. Like Jebro, his was Unity Gaming as well. Like when he was around, he started trying to do something like this, but then he kind of stopped after a while.
Yeah. I want to see listen, Teapot. The goal of this, right? The streamer house, all right? The Heartstock streamer house. You know what I want to see? I want to see that big fat giant logo of the sword. Right off a reception. You walk into a building that is right up there in the reception, and the receptionist is greeting you. How may I help you today? How would you like to be Heartstock today? All right, and that's what I want to see. Okay, and then you lead on to the corner and you see like 50 streamer PCs on the line right there, right? And then you got like big group cinema for like all the major promotion and all the major PowerPoint slides that you guys need to host, and as the plan.
Yeah, and ultimately, like, this is how it's going to be. Like, it's a very weird thing to say here, but like ultimately, I think I can get Heartstock to where I want it to be pretty much no matter what. I would love to have everyone on board. I think it would be easier on me and probably more effective overall, easier to coordinate. But ultimately, if people don't want to, then that's okay. We'll just do it on our own, right? That's, you know, I have no issue with that. Like, you know, I'll help anyway. Like, I'll help in any way that I can with everything, right? You know, like this, you know, this is like, again, like it's difficult to talk about this without like being overly personal. But I've invested a lot in Heartstock already. Like this is not something that I'm out to like directly benefit myself, right? Like as such, hopefully it will. I mean, I hope it does benefit me.
I mean, no,
over time.
Like there has to be some obviously like gain for yourself individually. Like don't be like, oh, I'm not selfish. No, like there's a reason. I mean, if you're putting effort into something, you want to at least have it benefit you. So I don't think it would be controversial. People are like, this is only benefiting I mean, it's benefiting everybody that's under the banner, right? So like, yeah. It's fine. Admit that like it's going to also benefit you, because ultimately if you're putting in hard work, you want a payoff for yourself, right? You want it to in a way pay off for the big way, but like also some of it, you know, you should definitely reap the benefits.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, no, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that wasn't the case. I was just saying that, you know, like this is not like I'm not some like evil villain here. Right? I just want to help the game. Like my main goal is to help the game, and it always is. Like, and if people don't want to help, that's okay, right? You know, I'll try and help them do their own thing in their own way. But if people want to get on board, I think that is the best way to go about it. And then, you know, everyone's very, very welcome to do so.
The biggest problem with Heartstock and United Arts of Tyria is that they were made separate. If they were made together from the start, it would be so much easier. Yeah, it could have been. I mean, I mean, the benefit is at least there is 2 communities. Yes, the disadvantage is now like it's kind of 2 communities doing their own thing. And I mean, United Arts of Tyria, we're not that old. Like we've only been doing this since officially November, but like October is kind of like where the idea formed to make an alliance of guilds that want to showcase a lot of different communities of the game. In a sense, that's Heartstock as well, right? That's basically what Heartstock comes down to.
I mean, is it so difficult? Like, I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing right now? I mean, like, I'm chatting to your viewers.
Isn't the
you're chatting to
like a collaboration of its own?
And I'm talking about not like the collaboration. Let's talk about community, right? Like you stream, I stream. Let's hang out, right? Let's chat. Let's talk. Let's get people in both communities, right? You know, this is one of the things that I really want to do. In the month of June with the community month, like I'm just going to go around talking to all the streamers. I'm going to appear on stream. Let's have a chat. Let's just shoot the shit. You know, let's talk. Let's get people playing in each other's events. Let's go.
Even the fashion contest, like even when those were on different or the same day but like conflicting each other, like a lot of people were like, hey, can we go to MM's stream first and like participate in the UAT fashion show, and then can we make it to your contest here on Heartstock? And the same with my stream. People were like, once we're done, MM, since you started early, can you host Teapot so that like we can just go and join in on his fashion? And that was basically like making it the best of the situation, right?
But, I mean, is that hard though? Like, is that difficult? Like, I mean, we're talking like this is impossible that we could actually make friends, right? Like, oh no, meeting new people on the internet. Like, I mean, really, is that super difficult? I don't think so, no. And like the Heartstock collaborating at Kappa thing, by the way. I mean, like, are you kidding me? Like I have openly said that I will work with anyone, anytime.
Guys,
right?
Like, by the way,
know,
I feel like some of the things that you do, like maybe just don't kind of maybe sometimes go like. Keep in mind, last week, by the way, this guy like actually was on someone else's stream at what was probably like 1 in the morning for him, helping him cast a streamer's PvP tournament, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I know.
Just to give you an example of collaboration, like
if you guys want my help, ask, right? And I will try and be there as much as I can, right? Like if you know, I'll come on your podcast, I'll come on your stream, 100%. Like you want me to cast something, you want to, you know, do some raid stuff together or some PvP stuff, ask, and I will appear. And you know, like, and the same is true for all the other guys too. Like, you know, we would love to promote your events. We would love to have your events, like, you know, support the events with additional prize money or admins to help out there, or some resources, some graphical assets. We would love to, like, yeah, 100%. And we have done this, and we will continue to do this as well, right? You know, like, you know, we were really big into the Beetle tournament. We're now planning on doing some Beetle stuff on our own. We were involved with the SAB community, some SAB speedrunning stuff there as well. Like, yeah, like 100%. Like,
by the way,
you know,
like,
I love the raid league.
That was
right?
a very big thing for the SAB community, because like the main guild is actually in UAT, and when we were coming up with our speedrun and you guys came up with your speedrun, they were like, oh, perfect, double content for this community. We're gonna join this one and that one. And that's basically cross promotion right there, even though it was indirect. But again, like, you're providing content for a community that has a very similar you know, interest. So
yeah, sure. I mean, like, I suppose that my like biggest issue with in a way a lot of this kind of debate discussion is that, in my opinion, this is incredibly easy. You know, in general, I'm the kind of guy who I think I can get along with basically anyone. Yeah, obviously, you know, you can't please them all, you know, as it is, right? But again, I don't really want anything to change, right? Like, I'm not looking to change other communities. I'm just saying, like, hey, you know, if you guys want in, like, hop on board, right? Let's go. Let's work together. That's as far as it goes. It's not like you must behave exactly like this. You must abide by our rules. Quite the opposite. I actually want people to be as independent as possible. I don't want to be restrictive in any way. I don't want people's creativity and like behaviors and communities to be restricted in any way. It's something that I've always been very explicit about as well. Like, this is actually one of the kind of the core foundation of the guild or of the organization. Right?
I would say though, I would really hope that like things like Heartstock and Iridescent. And by the way, if I missed any other like apparently streamer community that's in Guild Wars 2, sorry, like
they're all mad now.
I'm just trying to like off the top of my head, but I would really love for, again, like, if you don't want to do Heartstock, sure, you don't want to do Iridescent, you don't want to do Gamers Giving Back, because they're also another big community of, you know, more focused on charity streams. If you don't want to do any of those 3 options, well, then collaborate with your friends, get your own community going and try to get it to that level, right? But ultimately realize a lot of this takes work. I'm sure, like, I mean, it took years and dedication to kind of get to the level of like, let's make Heartstock. Same with Shay, right? Like, it took her and I think Ari like months and months before they were able to come up with a proper way to them making a stream team. Same with Gamers Giving Back. They've been doing this since Guild Wars 1, and I'm sure they've had a lot of challenges to do. So it's gonna be very difficult to get a lot of this done. But once you're over that, like, the difficult part, everything then becomes easy. Everything comes full circle, and you'll still face more challenges. Nothing's actually ever easy. Like, you'll always keep getting challenges, but once you get over the biggest hurdle, which is getting it going, everything else is a bonus. It's not that simple. Even Heartstock most of the time is quiet and less communicative towards group invites. When I joined for days and asked if anyone wanted to do Fractals raids, there was tumbleweeds flying past. Not sure. I don't know about, I mean, Teapot can answer this more specifically, but I feel like you guys post a lot on your Discord anyway. So if you're not on the Discord, maybe you're missing something, because I see a lot of.
It depends what time of the day. Like the thing is, like EU is pretty dead. Like before, like the mid-afternoon, and yeah, like certainly, like well, the thing is with something like Hardsuck is that it's honestly like a novel idea, right? Like it is a very different way of playing the game than most people normally have. Like not using the LFG, like playing with a guild instead. This is actually something that doesn't happen very often. You have this with like smaller static groups, but less so with big guilds. But it is actually, yeah, we're getting there 100%. Like, like there are a lot of regular strike missions, regular raids going on, like trainings, normal runs, right? Like semi-pug runs, right? Same thing with fractals, right? And strike missions and DRMs. So yeah, like this is actually happening and it will continue to grow. But yeah, this is an absolutely accurate criticism. But it's kind of like, that's describing the problem, right? The problem is that people don't engage in this way.
That criticism applies to a lot of other big guilds, so it's not really specific to just one
community. Well, this is what I mean. Yeah, this is a problem that within the entire Guild Wars 2 community, like the Guild Wars 2 community, the way Guild Wars 2 is operated is that you don't really need to engage socially with other players very much. You can just use the LFG and then not talk to people, right? Like, you don't need to really be in a guild. Like guilds in a way are a little bit obsolete, because of like, well, Discord basically, right? And it doesn't really do anything. So like, yeah, we're trying to actually change that a little bit. We're trying to change the culture, which is why we want to have like this really big push, because we want this to change. Like Visionary here is absolutely correct, by the way. Like he is pointing out the fact that, yeah, like in general with big guilds and big communities, they tend to be a little bit resident sleeper. He's right. Okay, but the thing is, that's the problem. Like, now let's fix it. Let's actually talk about the solution. How are we going to change that? Do we want to change that? Like, for a start, I think we do. But, do you even want to do that, right? Have that conversation. Do you want it to change the direction of the community? I think we do. I think we want to change the narrative of Guild Wars 2 and change the way people engage with the game in a way that will actually make the game modes that we care about more popular and actually have potential for growth.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. The source aspect of MMOs is really big. Is really being crushed by developers pushing for solo play, but the people want group play. Here's the thing I find with Guild Wars 2, and maybe sometimes other MMOs it hits the same way, but in Guild Wars 2, I always find that like if you have a group of friends, you'll never get bored of the game. You'll find something to do. I'm sure like even if you've achieved every achievement in the game or you've done every raid and you're just kind of bored, even just hanging out with your friends in a Discord, playing Guild Wars 2, you'll find that you'll do old content just for the sake of doing it like again, because you want to just do something while you're really like the main thing is that you're having fun with the friends, and Guild Wars 2 just becomes like, I'm just playing fractals even though I've done this a million times just for the sake of like we're doing something but we're hanging out together, right? And in a sense I think I found it more enjoyable in Guild Wars 2 than in things like World of Warcraft, just because because of that casual aspect, which I think again is a big plus that this game allows you to enjoy it that way, is why you kind of have these moments more than other MMOs. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's just the way the game goes, right? It is an accurate statement there. Yeah. That we want to do this.
So we've been kind of on this community thing for a while. Do you want to discuss any other topic before we maybe wrap up with one last our last topic basically before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I actually really wanted to Retribution Zero like a while ago. He said like, what is the most underrated thing? Like, is there something that people don't talk about, like, or that's something that's like underrated, right? Like in the game. And in my opinion, it's definitely the Icebrood saga. I think the Icebrood saga is actually insanely underrated. People got really fixated on the story, and instead of talking about like what Arena was actually doing and the context of the Icebrood saga, they ignored all of that and just said, "Oh yeah, like the gameplay kind of sucks a bit." Sorry, like the story kind of sucks, which is true. But they actually, Icebrood saga actually addresses a lot of the fundamental flaws in Guild Wars 2, particularly with regards to not reusing old content to fit multiple audiences, replayability, and gameplay focus. And all three of those things, in my opinion, were actually addressed very, very nicely with strike missions, dragon response missions, and Dragonstorm within the context of the Icebrood saga.
I think, so I think in general, like if they, let's just say, weren't developing the expansion, I really feel like, yeah, Icebrood saga would have probably been much more well received, given that they would have been able to work on the episodes longer and build towards what they, the actual plan that they were trying to do, rather than rush the story and rush the entire content. So I think, yeah, again, it falls flat because of Champions kind of like, you realize it's basically just tying up everything quickly. But if you play the first few episodes of Icebrood saga, it's very well done. Story mode is just insane. The lore.
Screw the story. Let's talk about gameplay.
Strikes.
Right,
I mean,
I'm not
Strikes
talking
was
about. I'm not talking about.
honestly. You want to talk about gameplay? I think Strikes in
Right.
itself was very well received. I mean, I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, we're not getting raids, we're just getting Strikes." But I think give it 3-4 months, weren't people actually just enjoying Strikes? And then when they introduced DRMs, people were like, "Oh no, Strikes is gone now," and it's like, well, it was always fun. I think Strikes were honestly a great implementation.
This is what I mean. Like, and honestly, Greg, will be a great experiment, guys, for all of you in chat to do right now. Like, if you're mad at Icebrood Saga, just go ahead and figure out how many hours you put into Icebrood Saga, like strikes, DRMs, the maps like Bura, like Drakkar, Drizzlewood, right? Like, add up all the hours there and compare it to season 2, 3, and 4. I can almost guarantee you got a lot more value out of the Icebrood Saga in terms of gameplay, in terms of like hours in the game, than you did in those maps. The exception would be maybe season 3, because people did a lot of like the open world farming there for ascended gear, like when ascended trinkets were a little bit annoying to get a hold of. But yeah, in general, I would say that the Icebrood Saga generated some of the most gameplay hours and most repeatable gameplay that we've ever seen. Far more than season 4, not even close. Season 3, definitely season 2 as well. Season 2 maybe a little bit more debatable, I guess, because people really love their Silver Waste, I guess, and they love Battle on the Breachmaker. But season 3 is like questionable, but like I would say it would compete with those and probably exceed all of the hours you put into those games.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really interesting thing, like from a gameplay perspective. Yeah, sure, you can criticize the narrative. That's very fair. I think there's a lot of problems with the narrative there for sure. But then if you look at it from the point of like, how much did I play this game? How much value did I get out of this content? I think that's where Icebrood Saga really gets a bit more interesting.
It's also part of daily content. Like, think of it like this: Strikes is now part of people's daily routine, right? So it means you're still doing it. It's not like you're not even playing it. People are still doing Strikes on a daily basis. It's part of their daily on to-do list for whenever they log into the game. And it gives decent rewards. You can build up to ascended gear using Strikes. So yeah, I mean, sure, maybe the initial reaction is like, this meant no raid, but honestly, these Strikes were bite-sized content that was very enjoyable. You could do 6 of them, or was it you know, like, I guess 6 of them, yeah, without the escort, because that one's just ridiculously long, right? No one wants to do the escort, but the other ones were very well done. So DRMs are more fun than the open world, in my opinion. I guess that's also a different argument. What's more your taste? I think DRMs, yeah, could probably like be improved upon. I was honestly expecting DRMs to be a mix of what they are now and the elements of Strikes, and where like the end of the DRM you were gonna fight like a strike level boss. Now obviously that was too much to ask for, because they're giving you like 9 DRMs or like 3 DRMs every episode, so that's not likely you were to get a different strike boss every DRM. But I was thinking that it could have built towards like that, right? Maybe there was, if it's the one thing I would say they could have improved on DRMs, is maybe something like that. If not, it's still very good all the way on its own.
Yeah, I think that's why I think it's underrated. I think it's getting way more, it's getting trashed way harder than I think it perhaps deserves.
Yeah, I think DRMs, but I won't rate them over open world. Their bad dungeons change my mind. Actually, they're probably better than dungeons, to be honest. Yeah.
I mean, they're interesting. I mean, like, they are dungeons, but without their own like unique environments. Is what they are. Like dungeons, I think like have much better environmental design than DRMs. And honestly, the gameplay is actually surprisingly similar. I think in there, like obviously dungeons are are very much about movement and completing puzzles and events very, very quickly to get to a boss to kill it quickly. DRMs are surprisingly similar. They have a bit more of like a more restrictive design. Is that a lot of the time you'll have to like, you know, wait for an event to complete, or like complete an event, as opposed to being able to skip the event in some way. They have a similar design philosophy. I think dungeons have a purer design philosophy, and I think I would like to see them actually go more towards the dungeon direction there as well, but kind of keep like the very boss focus. Because like the big thing that I don't like about dungeons is that they aren't very boss focused. It's almost entirely movement focused. When you get to the boss, it will die in about like 10 seconds with your, you know, because you can do a lot of damage, and dungeon bosses don't have very much health.
The way to improve that is add the I mean, fractals are basically, you could say, better dungeons, right? They're the same kind of thing, a little bit maybe shorter than your typical.
Well, they're just different.
Just different, yeah. So honestly, I mean, End of Dragons could have new dungeons, who knows? But even if they don't, I mean, I'm sure there's quite a few amount of fractals they can release with that expansion alone, right? So dungeons called kill off because the community cried for 1 week after release. I think dungeons were kind of I don't know. I mean, I feel like it was a mixed reaction. It wasn't really too much negativity towards dungeons, but there wasn't there was also, there wasn't maybe too much positive. I think it was a mix. Either you liked it or you didn't like it.
I mean, I think that's an entire other can of worms for us. I think Guild Wars 2 had some really weird things at the start of its life because people were very confused. And you can see why they added fractals, right? Like, why did they move from dungeons to fractals? Well, they moved from dungeons to fractals because they wanted to validate gear progression in the game. And that's when they added Ascended gear, right? And they wanted to make like the end game a bit more progression-y, basically, a bit more vertically. And this is something that dungeons didn't deliver on. Like, the thing is about Guild Wars 2 is that you weren't supposed to do dungeons to get loot as such. Like, well, you were, but you don't get better gear by doing them. Like, the way you increase your rewards in Guild Wars 2 is by being better at the game. For example, if you go in and like just play through a dungeon normally, it might take you 10 minutes or so. If you're doing it with your dungeon tour group, it might take you 3 minutes per path. So in other words, you are actually getting rewarded, but you get rewarded for being better at the game, right? As opposed to you get better gear by doing the content. The better gear is your mind improving. And that was like a really tough concept for a lot of people to grasp and was very unfamiliar. If you're coming from WoW, that's not how the game works, right? Like the game works is that you do your dungeon and you get better gear and then you can do stuff better, right? Because you're more powerful now. In Guild Wars 2, that didn't happen in any way. And that's why they added fractals. And that's why they moved away from dungeons, because dungeons didn't deliver an end game experience that was relatable enough. It was a bridge too far. It was too different from other MMO content, and it left people having no idea what to do in the game. The point of Guild Wars 2 is to get better and farm skins, right? And that was not... And then, getting better at the game allows you to farm faster, essentially, because the faster you do dungeons, the more gold you can get, right? The quicker you can get your legendary, right? Etc., etc., etc. And that is something that people did not really grasp very well, and that's why that's probably a big reason why dungeons died, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think they had to kind of, like you said, give kind of like a incentive. But then I really think like later on, it's probably why they realized, well, the game in itself is the incentive, really, right? The fact that skill level ultimately determines how well you improve in this game versus gear progression. I think that's a better take than an MMO, where it encourages you to get better rather than rely on all this crazy amount of gear that gets irrelevant after another update 5 months down the line, right? Because that's what you're playing in other MMOs. It's basically you're grinding, and if you are gone for a year, you're basically behind. You have to go ahead and gear up first before you get to play the new content. And in Guild Wars 2, the benefit is you don't do that. You log in, and sure, older content now is not relevant. The dungeons are not relevant in that sense that they used to be, but it allows you to enjoy the game from the moment you log in. You don't have to worry about putting in 20-30 hours to grind something and then start enjoying the game, or whatever you want to do immediately, right? That you can't. So dungeons have their own skins.
I mean, yeah. And again, Guild Wars 2 is a weird game, and it threw people off. You're exactly right. And like the point of the game was to play the game, and I think a lot of people tend to like get the enjoyment out of progression, but it was a different kind of progression. Guild Wars 2 was offering you a skill progression as opposed to a gear progression. There's even in Guild Wars 2, there's this really big mentality that hours in equals reward out, and that's just not how Guild Wars 2 works. Like, you can put all the hours you want, but if you don't know how boons work, you're probably never going to kill Veil Guardian outside of buying it, right? If you want to like get to platinum in PvP, it doesn't matter how much gear you grind and like how much you outgear your opponents. Can't even do that, right? You'll never get there unless you actually get to a certain skill bar, right? Like, unless you get over that skill floor, the game will deny you forever. Like, that's the progression in the game. It's not gear in Guild Wars 2, and that was something that definitely confused people. And that's not me saying that, oh wow, look at these fucking plebs, like, oh wow, gear. Well, no, it's like very understandable, right? Like, if you've played MMOs, that's all that you've ever experienced. That's how every game works. Like, all these MMOs, like even the modern ones, like Final Fantasy, like WoW, right? These are essentially the same game, right? Like, Rift was like a very aggressive WoW clone, right? And all of these games, they are the same game. They work almost identically, like with this idea of like, you play the game, you get items out, and you become stronger. That is the way MMORPGs work and have always worked since the dawn of time. So is it really surprising that coming to Guild Wars 2, people were very confused when it was a completely, and not even completely different. Completely different might have been okay. It was polar opposite, right? Like, it was the opposite of how most MMOs worked. And that was like really, really off-putting, which is why a lot of the end game content fell incredibly flat, because people didn't know how to engage with it. Like, I think I think I think it wasn't exactly bad. Like dungeons aren't bad content. It's just that players didn't understand what it was. Like they were like, what the hell is this, right? And this is on ANET, by the way. This is actually on ANET. This is not on the player base. Look, if you've got a kid who doesn't understand how to solve a maths problem, is it the kid's fault or is it the teacher who didn't teach them well enough? I would say it's the teacher. And it's the same thing here with ArenaNet. ArenaNet did a very, very bad job of explaining what their game is. Like, what is the point of Guild Wars 2? And I think people don't understand that to this day. People don't know that. And what is the point in Guild Wars 2? Well, why would you play this game? What does it have to offer? A lot of players don't have this knowledge. And a lot of people outside the game have got no clue in any way. I don't play WoW right now. I play Classic WoW, but I don't play retail. And I don't play Final Fantasy. I've never played the game, but I can tell you what the point of the game is. Same thing with BDO, right? I don't know. I know a bit about BDO, but I could tell you what the point of the game is. If you talk to a lot of people about Guild Wars 2, I guarantee you not that many people would be able to tell you what the point of Guild Wars is. Like, what do you do in that game? They'd say like, dress up, right? Or like fashion, like story. Like these are all semi-true, but it's not the full picture, right? It's not a very good representation of the actual game. Whereas I can turn around and say, oh yeah, in WoW, you do dungeons, then you do mythic, then you do raids, and you progress, right? You like grind out all the reputations, like you level up your covenant there because of that. Easy peasy. Same thing in Final Fantasy. Like you go through the difficult, like you play through the story, then you do your early level raids, then you can do your your savage raids. You can eventually do ultimate if you want to. Right? I can tell you like how the game works, right? Even though I haven't played the game, I can tell you how it works. BDO, honestly, it's a bit more esoteric to me, I think, but I know that you run around in circles, one-shotting mobs for silver, and then you RNG gamble and rage quit the game. That's basically how BDO works there as well. I can explain how these games work, but if you asked a BDO player about Guild Wars 2 or a WoW player about Guild Wars 2, they probably would have no idea what the game's actually about.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, you can kind of explain some aspects of Guild Wars 2, but I feel like you said, like,
no.
What's the end goal? You're talking about like what's your end goal, right? And people usually don't know the end goal. Is that what you mean?
You can explain it, but they don't know it, right? Like you don't need, this is what I mean. It's not in, I don't think people have the awareness of what the game is about. I'm not saying that people don't understand it or couldn't understand it. I'm saying they just don't have the knowledge because I think the game doesn't make that very, very clear because it is deliberately very, very open-ended. A game like Final Fantasy and WoW, these games are not open-ended. They are very, very railroaded. It is like, okay, you're going to do this content, then this content, then this content, then this content, right? That is the way it goes. In Guild Wars 2, it isn't like that, right? Like, like your journey is very much player-defined, which in my opinion is a strength, but it is definitely a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword, but it really comes back to bite ArenaNet in the ass, and the fact that a lot of players don't understand the point of the game and think the game's kind of a joke.
I guess that's kind of why people usually, like, when they're towards the end game, they're like, well, what do I do now? Like, I did the story, I'm level 80, how do I get ascended? And then once they figure it out, they're like, okay, what am I supposed to do? And do I have to do these in an order, or can I just do anything what I want? And yeah, like you said, like, it doesn't maybe market it that, like, yeah, if you want to do raids, you can just get into raids immediately. If you want to do fractals, PvP, world versus world, once you're level 80, you can do all of those, right? It's just people don't know if it's you have to do them one after the other, or can you just do whatever you want, right? And yeah, I think that's, like you said, more the fault of the company for not maybe clearing things up like that, right? Making player have to figure that out. Guild Wars 2 really does feel like a game from before the internet when you just did everything for fun. I remember early in the game just doing jumping puzzles with friends for fun and having a great time. I guess, yeah, in a sense, it can be like that. And again, this is a both positive and negative, right? The positive is that, like, there is a lot of enjoyment that you get. Just the game itself is very enjoyable, right? The negative is that you have a lot of these game modes, but you have no idea which one is supposed to come before the other, or if you could just play them all by themselves and they have nothing to do with each other, right?
Yeah, but that's good, right? It gives you a lot of choice. You don't have to do anything. Like you're not forced into any area of content. It gives the player a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
But Adam is right, by the way, here. He's saying that people want a bit more of a railroad experience. Correct. Like, why do you think that, if you actually like map the level design of a Call of Duty game, it's like a straight line? Like, I mean, yeah, of course, right? This is what people want. MMOs are, I don't want to say terrible games, but like the concept of an MMO is not a popular one. Like, in my opinion, an MMO is like a very open-ended experience, but that isn't what the average player actually wants. Like, the average player wants a very, very streamlined experience. And look at the progression of games. Like, you started out with stuff like real-time strategy games, then that got simplified to MOBAs. You had like that got simplified down to MOBAs, and then then from MOBAs you basically got to battle royales essentially, which is an even more streamlined concept of that. Right, over time, games are getting less open-ended and more streamlined and simpler concepts. So, and yet you go down then you go down all the way from something like Fortnite, then you go to Among Us, which is even simpler. Sorry, not Among Us. You go to Fall Guys, right? And then below Fall Guys is Among Us, right? Like in terms of simplicity of the game. Like
Yeah, it's just one concept, right? And do this, right?
Yeah, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way the audience is for games. I mean, there are really, really good, simple games. It's just that MMOs are always going to struggle here to kind of like fight against this tide. Like the cultural zeitgeist of gaming is simplicity, it is accessibility, and it is streamlining of mechanics. There are very few games that actually have complicated mechanics these days. And I mean, look at WoW. Like WoW's a great example of this. You used to have this massive sprawling talent tree. Now you basically pick a choice every 10 levels or so, right? Like, you had way more abilities back in the game, like in Classic. Now you have a lot less abilities in retail WoW. That it's less buttons to press, right? There's less going on there. That you're always going to be fighting against the rising tide of it's not necessarily casual players. It's just that like people don't want to have to think too much. They want to have fun when they're playing the video game, right? They don't want to have to like, oh my God, like where is this NPC? I can't remember where he is. I got to find him. I need to talk to him. People don't want to do that, right? They want to play their game. They want to have fun. And this is why MMOs, if you go in the slightly sandboxier direction, it's always going to bamboozle people. Like EVE Online is a brilliant game, like from a conceptual standpoint, like a genuinely genius design with a lot of the stuff they have there. But why isn't it very popular? Like, why is it not like a massive MMO? Well, because it's unbelievably complicated, right? It's incredibly esoteric to get.
But here's the thing. I think it's also the fact that people have now, like, in a sense, a smaller attention span than they used to, right? Like back then, a lot of the attention span allowed people, people were more interested, I guess, in that complex idea of an MMO that you play with online players and everything, and there's an interaction there, right? Now, ever since we've gotten to post 2010 until now, people have started to like that less and less, to just want content that satisfies them and they're out, right? This is why mobile genre now has overtaken, right, as a very successful and very lucrative genre for gaming, right? Because people can just play it on any point in time that they want, get in, get out, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, doesn't matter, 5 minutes even. And even in the sense of, a lot of the FPS games, right? They are more focused on delivering the online features, but those game modes themselves are very, like you said, very not one dimensional, but in the sense that's just, they have a very specific feature in mind, and this is what it provides you, such as Among Us, such as battle royales, such as Fall Guys, those games that provide you one specific form of content. It's fast. You can log in like from work, or when you come back from work, you can play like, for 2 hours, and in those 2 hours you'll feel accomplished because you've played, let's just say 10, 12 games, right? Depending on how long it takes you to die or whatever it takes a game to finish. So like in those 2 hours, you feel like you've done so many games of the same content or multiple modes of a different content, versus an MMO where in those 2 hours you might have only done 2 or 3 things in that time frame, right? So I think it's the attention span is just really reduced compared to back
no, I don't actually agree with that. I think the audience has changed. Like the thing about gaming, it's become very mainstream. Like back in the day, if you wanted to play WoW, one, you had to have a computer that could run it. Two, you had to actually know about it, right? And you had to be a bit of a greasy nerd as well. Like people back in the day, like of gaming, it was like much harder to get into. Like the barrier to entry was much higher. There was also a sub fee attached to it as well with a lot of these games. Like a lot of games had sub fees, so the community was inherently more hardcore because it was way more gate kept, right? And that is it's not an advantage as such of gatekeeping. It's a consequence of gatekeeping. If you have a barrier to entry, then you are going to have a very different community. Now there is zero barrier to entry. Like everyone who has a mobile phone, everyone has got like a laptop to play games on, so everyone can get into this. I would say that people or like your average gamer, like your average casual gamer, has always been extremely casual with a short attention span. It's just that's changed from being a minority to the overwhelming like absolute majority, right? Like back in the day, yeah, everyone in WoW like was certainly like a bit more willing to kind of put some time into it. Now that just isn't really the case anymore, because like the audience has changed, like the demographics of gaming has completely changed, and the games have therefore adapted to that and changed the way the games work. because of that. And someone brought up Dark Souls here, and Dark Souls is a great example because yeah, Dark Souls has got a reputation for being like super hardcore, right? But consider how many hours it takes to beat Dark Souls and compared to how many hours it takes to really get anything done in an MMORPG, right? Like Dark Souls is chicken feed compared to MMOs, right? Like, you know, like Dark Souls, it will definitely take players a good amount of hours to beat, but MMOs, you're gonna be playing this game for like 1,000 hours, right? You know what I mean? Like you're gonna be like, you're gonna be wasting some serious time here.
But
like MMOs are like a crazy investment.
It seems like there's more interest, and again, maybe this is kind of why some of these, if you notice, all the successful recent games that have come out are all like short forms of content, right? Like I mean, Apex Legends is basically
because it's more mainstream.
Yeah, more mainstream. It's more mainstream, but I feel like it's because the fact that they're mainstream because of their simplicity, and in a sense, it's just easier to get into. You're not gonna have to spend, like someone said here, like 500 hours or 200 hours to get to the point where now it's starting to, you know, where you're actually playing, I guess, the end game of the game. Like those games are basically that you're just playing the end game, right? It's just, and they're more competitive. So yeah.
This is exactly what I meant. I'll try and explain a little bit better. Like the thing that's happened is that the overall population of Earth was always like this. The difference is that back, the olden days of gaming, you were targeting like the 1%. Now they're targeting everyone, right? People haven't changed, the games have, right? All they're doing is the gaming industry is trying to capture as much of the audience as they possibly can, right? It's not that like humanity is like become more vapid. I mean, like maybe a little bit because of social media and stuff. That's possible, right? But I think people are still like very, very willing to like invest in things that they want to. It's just that most people never want to invest in things they don't actually care about that much. And because gaming is so accessible now, right? This means that, like if they make it, or rather if they make it very, very accessible, they can target more people. You can make like a really, really hard game, like a really try hard game, and you can end up like WildStar and shut down. You can do that, right? Like if you want to. But the thing is, it's not really that practical if you want to go in that direction. Like you're going to be limiting your audience. Like, there's a reason why New World changed its audience from like a really hardcore open world PvP game, basically like EVE Online with swords. There's a reason they changed that into an opt-out PvP system, because they realized that if they did like a try-hard game, yeah, it might be a better game, but the thing is, their audience will be so much smaller. So they said, oh, wait, we could basically market this to 10 times or like 100 times the player base by making it a more casual experience. People who already play MMOs are definitely going to want to play a more casual experience, because most players in gaming are casual players. Then yeah, like they're obviously going to make that call, right? Because they like money, right? It's as Amazon Game Studios, right? They want to make some serious money. They want to get the return on the investment. So that's just the way that it's always going to go. Like, like companies are going to target the maximum amount of people that they think they can. And because, like say 20 years ago, your average person wouldn't have like a gaming rig, right? So your audience is basically locked to people who have the ability to even play these games properly, right? But now that's not the case, because everyone's got a computer that can play games. So now the audience, like the prospective audience, is so much bigger that obviously they're going to make it more accessible. Because back in the day, right? Yeah, if you had a gaming rig, yeah, you were probably, you were like willing to kill 100 wolves to level up in WoW, right? Like, if you had like, you're the kind of person who's got a gaming PC, is like super into gaming, is in these forums, knows about this stuff, then yeah, like you're going to be willing to kill some, collect some bear asses. But like that, I don't think that's really the case anymore. Because now all of a sudden there's zero barrier to entry, which is a good thing, by the way. Like, I don't think it's good to have barriers to entry to gaming or to anything like that, but it does actually change the way that companies are going to develop games, because now they're going to develop games with a very, very low barrier to entry. There's like no like build up or like downtime really, which is why you end up with stuff like even MOBAs are kind of too slow now, right? Like you want arena shooters, you want Fortnite, right, or battle royales, right? Because even the build up in a MOBA in like the early farming stage is too slow for a lot of people. Now MOBAs are still really, really popular, and you'll see that like promoting early game aggression, like certainly in rank play. I know that in pro games in MOBAs it can end up getting very, very slow sometimes, but yeah, like you'll see that developers will try and speed these games up and make them like more interesting, like more accessible and faster paced, right? Because people just want to get in there and play. They don't want to like kill creeps for half an hour before they can actually do anything. And same thing in WoW, right? Or same thing in MMOs, right? People don't want to farm 1,000 chickens, right, to get there, right? They want to immediately start playing the game. There are some exceptions to the rule, like RuneScape is like the really big example here. But then look at RuneScape 3 and old school RuneScape, right? Like, they kind of failed here. Like RuneScape 3 didn't really, I guess, take off.
I think RuneScape 3 was meant to be like they're trying to kind of compete by kind of updating it, but then people, the whole takeaway with RuneScape is people enjoy it for the simplicity of its graphics, the simplicity of it's a game that you could just log in and it really has no direction. You do whatever you want in that game, right? Like it's you want it to PvP, you wanted to do some quests, you wanted to go kill something. That's what it comes down to, right? But I don't know. It's more in the sense that, and Castellano brings this good point, right? There is more players you can get out of like who have games because on the phone, because everybody has a phone these days, right? Everyone has a mobile. Like, no, who doesn't at this point, right? Like, it's a thing, and it's just, yeah, like you said, maybe the audience is like now the fact that there is, I guess, even, I mean, at that point we didn't have the reason why the market was also focused on MMO was back in 2000s. Early 2000s, we don't have smartphones, so we obviously didn't have a genre of gaming on the phone. That didn't exist yet. That the whole concept was just a concept, right? So the reason why this is all shifting now is because now we have smartphones that can run stuff like this, right? So it's created the genre for us.
Exactly right, and this is why mobile gaming is crushing every other form of gaming out there. It absolutely destroys it. It's because it is the most accessible, and that means you have access to the widest audience of players. And also, this is where things do get a little bit insidious. You also have because it's like a very, very low barrier to entry. People aren't very invested, and if people aren't very invested, you can actually do really shitty things in the game and get away with it. For example, almost every mobile game has an absolutely atrocious business model, right? It's like very, very aggressive, and the reason you can get away with that is because no one cares, because people just play the game. They don't really care about like the game being fair or competitive, right, in any way, because people aren't invested. And this something actually is, in my opinion, like a really scary thing for gaming. This is the most this is the scariest thing in gaming is apathy, right? Like the player base are not very invested in gaming as a concept and in the games that they play, because they just play for fun, then move on to another game when they get bored, right? And this actually enables companies to behave extremely badly across the entire industry, because if the community is going to hold the company to account, then in that case, you can't get away with this. But if you're doing something like a mobile game, right, like you can make the game really, really monetized, like really, really aggressive, and make it like very, very pay to win. People won't really care because the game can still be fun if it's pay to win, right? Like games that are pay to win can still be fun to play, at least for a short period of time. And then by the time that you realize that, oh yeah, this game sucks, you've already spent money on the game and they don't need you anymore. So like that's the really big downside of this, I think. But yeah, like welcome the mobile gaming overlords. Here we go.
Yeah. I wonder, is there any like are there any like major, in a sense, streamers or communities of mobile gaming as much as MMOs in a sense? Because I feel like the thing is why people maybe might be fine with pay to win in mobile games is more because they don't know who the other person is at number 1 or number 2. But like, I don't know if this is true, but is it in a sense?
Because they just don't. People just don't care about competition because I mean,
they're more like self-involved in their self, right? They're like more like I'm just doing this because I want to do it. I don't care if there's another guy who's number 1, because I think maybe they're just doing it for the sake of like they log in on their phone and that's what it is to them.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, you've been bowling, right? You've probably been bowling at some point in your life.
Yeah,
bowling.
Yeah.
I mean, did you care about it being like ultra competitive? Probably not, right? I mean,
no.
Look, that's what gaming is to most people. It's like a very offhand activity. Like, like when you go and just do like a random activity, like with family and friends, like you just go kick a ball around, play some football, right? Or like, I don't know, go play like a random tennis match. You don't care, right? You're not invested. It doesn't mean anything to you. Even if you watch something like, if you watch like the Olympics, like you won't really like necessarily be like ultra invested. You're looking at the sport, you go like, oh yeah, that's okay, right? I guess, right? I'm enjoying it, right? Even if you have the Twitch streams, I don't think it really makes people necessarily care about integrity. I mean, like the example of this that would really come to mind is Clash of Clans tried to do this, right? And had to have like loads of creators playing it, right? And obviously Raid Shadow Legends does this too, and AFK Arena is also doing this. So I think it is these companies do it, therefore it is a valuable thing to have. Like it is a valuable piece of marketing to have people engaging with your product. But it's more there as like done as ads rather than actual like sponsored streams or other like long-term streamers. And the reason is because you don't want to play Raid long-term, right? Because the game isn't good. That's why, like, ultimately you can't really, like, unless you actually have these people on the payroll, you're not going to be able to get people to stream these games on a daily basis because they aren't good. Like, you're like making content about them, like you can make some money, but you won't really find like a crazy amount of videos about this stuff, because why would you, right? Like, you're going to be branded basically as sellout, and then also like, you actually have to play the game there as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, in a sense, I mean, like for example, me, I play Raid Shadow Legends maybe once every 2 weeks at this point, once every 2 weeks. When I first got the sponsor stream, by the way, like, which, yeah, I obviously said yes to that because you got to get the money, guys. You got to get the paycheck. I mean, and I found the game, like, it's enjoyable. Like, it's a game that I could do in my free time. I still play it till now, like maybe once every 2 weeks. I'll still log in. I'll play it for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. But again, it's more for free time, right? I don't find it as like that's my main form of content to play, right? That's not a game I will commit everything that I have to, right? And I think that's why maybe mobile games in a sense are successful, because that's what they are. They don't strive to be a game changer to the genre. They're just more like, this is a game, we want to be played by millions of people. People will find out if this game is enjoyable. It will become their, you know, free time type of thing to pass on the train if they're on their way to work, or in their sitting at home on the couch and they just want to play something quickly, if they're waiting for something. And that's why maybe that genre overtakes in the form of, you know, in a sense it's bigger than the MMO genre, because it's not trying to be hardcore. It's just catering to people who just want a free time and enjoy something before they actually commit to their main thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is, that doesn't make good games, right? And I need to be heading off now, actually. So
same, by the way.
we can get a run. Yeah, like, we're going crazy. We're just going psycho. Like, this is getting out of control. This is out of hand, right? This is crazy. But yeah, I mean, my issue with this is that modern games tend to not be good, right? Or not be creative or innovative, because you're absolutely right. Like, you don't need to make a good game to make it like fun to play, or like, you know, fun to play 20 minutes of, right? Like, your average mobile game is not looking to engage you for like years and years and years, or not make you. It's not wanting you to play the game for a long period of time, or like really love the game, or really like change the industry. It's about making money, right? Like, that's what games are right now. It's like, it is, but they are very, very mass produced, and they are all about commercial value. They aren't really about making a really good game, and that's been lost because of the mass appeal.
Yeah.
Oh, the mass appeal factor of games. Because if you want to make a really, really good game, it's not going to have a broad appeal, right? Like, if you want to make something that's genuinely a really interesting and innovative game, it won't have a lot of mass appeal. It's almost by definition, because you're going to have to specialize in things that you want to do. And if you don't specialize, it won't work out well enough for you.
Yeah. And even if you do make a game that appeals to the general broad sense, you're still copying elements that any other game is copying. So in a sense, it's not creative. It's more like the same idea, but in a different way. So, you know, and things like that you could attribute to Call of Duty, Warzone, or for example, Battle Royale in Fortnite or Apex Legends. They're all different takes on the same basically game mode, right? So anyway, before we wrap up, just kind of like the closing to the stream, anything that you're excited about in End of Dragons, or kind of like your last closing thoughts for End of Dragons, and, you know, in a sense, this entire conversation, really.
I think the expansion will be very, very good. I think it will be probably one of the most polished experiences we've ever found in the game, and I'm very much hopeful that it will actually be a big Kickstarter for the regrowth of Guild Wars 2. Also, elite specs are the only relevant feature. There you go.
Yeah, good with that. All right, guys, exclamation point GVG, exclamation point GVG tweet. All right, I gotta chill out here right quick. Make sure you retweet that tweet on Twitter. Let's get Aina on board with this GVG tournament. I am trying to move, you know, like, I'm trying to do a lot with this tournament right now, you know, production value, a lot of type of things. You know, I'm taking a playbook out of Teapot's tournament rule book, right? And Teapot himself will be helping me cast some of these tournaments, upcoming GVG matches. All right, so if you want to get in on GVG gaming, exclamation point GVG tweet. Let's get that on the scene. WW Revival is incoming. All right, this is what's gonna get Alliances soon TM happening. All right, guys, GVG gaming. All right, make sure you tweet out all of that. Make sure you follow Teapot on the stream. You already know where he is. He's pretty much every day except Wednesday, and at this point you could consider that he was live today because he didn't take a rest. So make sure you follow. I'll include his link and Mukluk's links in the YouTube video, so there'll be links to that. And last but not least, get in touch with my socials, YouTube, subscribe. I'm getting with new content. I'm starting to release out guides. I'm becoming that next big streamer on my way kind of thing, right? So I'm trying to get up there. YouTube, Twitter, Discord, Instagram, if you want to watch my beautiful face without sunglasses or anything. And aside from that, if you want to join in on the Alliance, exclamation point Alliance, not versus Tyria. And of course, I'm doing a GVG logo art competition on the Alliance Discord. If you want to join in and help contribute, the winner will receive 1,000 gold for the Alliance, for the GVG artwork or the logo for the tournament, right? And then, of course, I'll be giving away some prizes to second and third place. Aside from that, that's it. You'll find this podcast probably uploaded tomorrow. And I don't know if Teapot recorded, but probably on his channel as well. And now we just got to go find somebody to raid. Who should we raid?
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff indeed. Well, there are a lot of targets right now that we could go for, but I'll leave it up to you, of course. You own these viewers, okay? These viewers are subservient to you right now. They will be your missile into the Guild Wars 2 section. Unleash them wisely.
There's quite a lot. There's even Guild Wars 2 themselves, by the way. No, we're gonna raid. You know what? We'll raid. Let's raid the new player, Xandri, right? She is.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. All right, guys. Appreciate you all for sticking by. Until next time, make sure you follow everything. I don't have to remind you to be a legendary gem. Subscribe and be a legendary gem today. Follow Teapot, follow Mukluk, follow everybody. You know, just stay in tune. You know what? Just follow all.
Do it.
Just do
everything. Just get in there.
Yeah, just
get down to business. Seriously, what we did.
Yes, for partner. You know what? Well, this GVG tournament, right? This better get me partnership. You know, if I'm trying to do something this big, I better get the partnership, right? But we'll see. We'll see about that. All right. We are going to raid Xandri. Make sure you go and give a lot of support to Xandri. If you like their content, make sure you go follow her. All right.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.
See you guys.